static at the start or something,
Mm.
but I didn't say that. But hello and welcome. This is the After Credits podcast. I've already lost the episode number, but
I think
I'm
it's
sure we'll
eight. I
fix it.
think it's eight.
You think it's 8?
Yeah.
Let's go with 8. Episode 8. Today, our main event is going to be Jurassic Park because it's its 30th anniversary next week,
Crazy.
right?
Yep.
They're bringing it back in IMAX in some places. They're bringing it back in 3D, which is really cool. Because I remember that was a big marketing thing when we were younger, was that they brought Jurassic Park out in 3D.
Yeah, and like Phantom Menace.
Yeah, so
I remember that era.
less excited for that, but yeah. Uh, but I might go see in 3D just for out of
I
interest.
won't see 3D, but I'm definitely going to watch the re-release, or at least try to,
Right.
for sure.
But yep. So and the thing is, they haven't really advertised it. They advertised it today when I was in the cinema, but they haven't really advertised it. So
They never do.
if you're watching this before, this will come out on Monday, so it'll be out in the cinemas the weekend after probably.
Mm.
But if you're watching this, go check your local cinema and see if they're running it. Because a lot of cinemas, especially south of England, they're doing a deal at the moment where they're playing the film for like £3 or something. So you get a cheap day out. Jurassic Park in the cinema. Um, but yeah, so that's our main event. We're going to be talking about Jurassic Park, the first one. Just probably we probably have some thoughts on the rest of the series too, but
Yeah.
this is probably more of just a little catch up on the film and a little our thoughts on the film. Robert has some more interesting thoughts than we do on this film, so
Yeah.
we this will probably be another episode, if not just a series of the Jurassic Park films at some point. But uh, at the moment, this is what we're doing. That's our main event. But first, we're going to have our film diary. So again, it's just me and Brandon. But yeah, you got a film for us, Brandon,
Right.
to start us off?
I'll start off. So this time round, we've not seen the same films, right? So this might be a little bit interesting.
Yes.
Because we're coming with different things here. So I've seen. Well, we'll start with. I think we'll start with Gran Turismo. I think because I've got some things to say. I think. Um, so just to begin with, I'm not. I'm not a car guy at all. I'm also not a racing game kind of guy either. I don't play racing games. I've never played Gran Turismo. Don't care to. You know, my racing game is GTA 5. That's the best you're gonna get with me. so, so yeah, so like going in, I was kind of expecting a very niche film. I won't lie, and I didn't really hear anything about reviews or anything. I saw a couple
What do you
trailers.
mean? What do you mean by niche? Do you mean naff?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah. I guess that's a better word for it. Just yeah, just kind of just your average, you know, film.
Right.
You know, just like oh, here's a racing film. Well, nothing like to be interested in it. But the premise from the trailer, I actually quite liked. Like, oh, it's the top
Yeah.
10 online racers in the world put in a real car, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And this is a true story, and I'm like, what? I'm like, that happened. so, so yeah, the premise on its own kind of took me in. Um, but then you were saying, oh, it's gotten pretty decent reviews, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I'll go and see it. And
Do you know if this was like, because you're not into cars, you've just said, do you know if this is like if it's based on a true story, if like people in familiar with racing, if they knew, if they would be aware of that, or if it's like they just didn't really, this is not really an unknown thing at all?
so what, like outside of the film, would people know about it, or
Yes.
oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure because it, like I said, I'm like quite into my gaming news and stuff, and I've never heard about this. You know what I mean? So, but again, I'm not. I'm totally outside of the bubble of Gran Turismo or Forza. You know, I'm just not that type of gamer at all. But yeah, it's kind of mad. It's kind of mad. But I won't lie though, I came out actually really enjoying it. For someone who doesn't care about any of it, like going in, I actually came out pretty into it. It's very like cliche in the sense of like, oh, he's got a bad relationship with his dad, and oh, he's the underdog, and oh, the coach is giving him a hard time. But you know, like eat all that stuff up. like I'm a Rocky kind of guy. Like that's like the simple stories tend to be
Well, yeah, a simple
the
thing
good
done
ones.
well can be
Exactly,
really satisfying. Yeah.
exactly. So I'll focus on sort of the positives first. Obviously, chip in with if you like. I know you've not seen it, but if you have questions or whatever, um, I think oh bugger, how have I forgotten his name? Buddy Hopper, David Harbour. Um, he's the best in this film. He's so good. Like he's like easily like putting in more effort than everyone else, and it shows kind of thing. I think it might just be because of the main actor in it, who can't remember his name, but let me just get up. He plays Jan. Uh, he's not the best. I know he's like a young guy, but so I'm not gonna. I don't want to like judge him too harshly, but he is pretty stale. I'm not gonna lie. And maybe that's just how the real person is in real life, and he's done a really good job, but he's not the most captivating person. so,
How
so
was Orlando Bloom?
you know what, right? You know what's really funny? I've seen all the trailers and stuff. I've seen him in the trailers, but it never clocked to me that that's Orlando
You're
Bloom.
joking. What do you mean?
It never clocked. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen him in a film in ages, but he just looks so different. I recognised him. I was like, "Who are you?" And then at the end of the credits, it says Orlando Bloom. I was like, "Wait, what?"
That was a bit like, not to derail it, but that was a bit like Gary Oldman in Oppenheimer.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah,
I was just like straight away like, oh, that's Gary
We had a
Oldman, and you
similar
were a bit
thing.
like, what?
Yeah, he was good though. He was good as well. He kind of plays the sort of oh, he cares more about the money and the business kind of thing. He doesn't really care about the lives at stake kind of thing. But he's also not the most hateable guy in the film. Like he's still likable, which is actually I think that's a pretty hard thing to achieve when you're two of those things. But yeah, I really liked David Harper's character. He was done really well. They gave him enough backstory for you to get involved. In fact, you know what? You're gonna love this. It reminded me of Cars 3. That's what it reminded me of. think of Lightning McQueen and Doc. That's the relationship they have here. so there you go. If that's what hooked you, then I don't know what will, because that's your bread and butter.
Well, nah, I don't know, mate. These are people,
True,
so
true, true. They're not
I
talking
don't know.
cars.
David Harbour's no Doc Hudson, mate.
Honestly, but I don't want to get into too much of spoilers because obviously there's not too much discussion we can have from it because I don't want to just in case you do see I don't want to just ruin all this stuff for you. But
Okay.
I know it's a true story as well, but still I went in not knowing anything, and there was moments where I was like, oh,
Well, mate,
you know?
again, not to bring up Oppenheimer, but like Oppenheimer's a true story, and a lot of folk didn't know how that
Well,
ended.
yeah, true, same. Like I only knew the bomb
Not
happened.
specifics, anyway. Yeah.
And even then, I didn't even know it was a test bomb. so I just want to. Anyway, we'll get to that. We'll get to
This is
that.
that's just a little foreshadow to one of my segments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, overall, I actually had a pretty good time with it. The result, it's not. It's not. I'm not going to call it a perfect film. It's an enjoyable film.
And it's not groundbreaking,
No, it's not groundbreaking.
but it's not trying to be at the same
It's
time.
it's a film you could easily just go out in the weekend, be like, "Oh, I'm going to watch this film and have a good time." You know what I mean? It's kind of like not in the same genre or sense at all, but it's kind of like Mario, right? It's like it's a perfectly good film that you can watch with the family or pals and have a good time out of it. Not you don't waste your money, you know. Um, yeah, 100%. And we've talked about this before. I think the first quarters, maybe the first third, is a little bit slow, but then the rest really picks up. Like so, essentially, when he finally starts driving, essentially when he's in the car, it picks up
Right.
right after there. That's when you feel like, okay, this is a sports film. Like let's go, and you're actually starting to get behind them and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not sure else what to really say about it, to be honest. Besides that, but yeah, pretty easy watch. Maybe it was just because of the film I watched before I didn't love, so I was kind of already, you
On a
know,
low.
yeah, I was on a
Yeah.
low. So, but based on reviews I've seen and stuff, people are enjoying it. So it's kind of mad because before the Sony had Uncharted, and Uncharted was kind of got mixed reviews. This has done better than Uncharted. personally, I'd probably put Uncharted above it, but that's because I really didn't mind that film, the Uncharted movie. I know that may be a hot take, but I think they just use each other. It's just like they're perfectly fine films to go in the weekend and see. Um, but yeah, no. Is there anything you want to know or anything like that? I know we've kind of talked about it before.
Uh, I don't know. I'll probably see it at some point. If I'm in the cinema anyway, I might go see it. And
Yeah.
or if it comes on streaming soon, I'll go see it. But
I'm-
I'm not really. It's not really a film I would. I guess that was the same with you, right? You had a mixture of films you wanted to see, so
Well,
you did that. But
yes, that's fine because I live away from the cinema now. I was saying this to the cinema host. I was like, oh, because I live so far away now, I like to just try and make a day out of it. So I've got like free tickets booked in one day, kind of thing, rather than go every day, and like travel that long. Um, yeah, not ideal. I've just looked at the box office. It's actually not made as much as I thought it would. It's made 31 million. I'm not sure what the budget is yet, but I assume it's
31.
yeah,
Is that global?
yeah, yeah,
Got that shite.
yeah.
Jeez, oh.
Maybe
Unless
it's
it's on like a.
maybe it's not
Unless
updated
it's.
yet though.
I was gonna say unless it's either not updated or it's a very small budget. But if you're getting David Harbour and Orlando Bloom and stuff, I doubt it.
Yeah, and it's a big brand, I believe.
Yeah.
Like surely, and it was advertised all over the place. I thought, much better than some other films. So, but yeah, so yeah,
It
I
does
would give it a
say.
thumbs up.
I don't know if this is just a preliminary thing, but it says 60 million is its budget,
Okay, well,
which means it's been out a good bit now, though, right?
it's been out for yeah. That kind of seems wild actually. It's been out for about 2 weeks, I think.
It's had quite a low budget, and it's probably, unless it does well in like streaming or DVD sales, I can't see that going any further. It seems like a bit of a flop, but
Damn.
not that that's a great for quality, right? But
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Look at the Flash.
yeah, well, maybe yeah, could be an indicator that people are fed up with the cinema, or they're fed up with because I don't know, like I'm not going to get all whiny and political, but it could be that people are just fed up with. Well, that's not true. I was going to say people are fed up with mediocre films, but one, this film's not mediocre for what it is, but also you've just compared it to Mario, and I get Mario has the bigger IP, but Mario made like $1 billion, so
Yeah, 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 yeah. If you consider that Barbie and Mario are the highest grossing films this year, mediocre films tend to be the the thing right now. So, so
flying shots. There you
yeah,
go. But
we ain't talking about Barbie.
I'll wait for Robert because he
Wait
enjoyed
for
it.
Robert. Yeah,
I haven't
exactly.
seen it
You know, seen it.
yet.
But yeah,
But
yeah. Well, yeah, thumbs up for Gran Turismo. I honestly didn't think I would say many good things about it, but that's just how it is. You know what? Sometimes that happens in films. You know,
sometimes that's okay.
sometimes that's okay. And if anything, I prefer it that way. I went in with very low expectations and came out being like, you know what? Not too shabby. Not too shabby.
Very good.
Anyway, go on, your turn.
Well,
What have you
I
seen?
guess mentioning Barbie, I guess the next natural step would be Oppenheimer.
Mm.
Now, Oppenheimer was such a I fucking love this film. Uh, I've seen it 3 times now. As of recording, I just came back from London going to see it at the BFI IMAX, which is their quote, the biggest screen in the country, which it fucking feels like because it's massive. But yes, so I've seen it 3 times. 2 times was like a month ago, and then once today. But I think we will. I would like to dedicate a whole episode to this at some point,
Absolutely,
anyway. Even
absolutely. Yeah.
if it's obviously with Robert, but also maybe more of an analysis video. We'll see. We'll see where the channel goes. But I would like to do that because I have a lot of thoughts on this film,
Mhm.
uh, and I want any excuse to go see it again. Basically, if they were if there was still tickets to the IMAX screening, I would get more probably. But I do. To be fair, I do have some criticisms or complaints with the IMAX version,
Ooh.
but when the IMAX version is at its peak, it's probably some of the like clearest, greatest looking like film I've ever seen on that screen. It's unreal. But I'll get back. I'll get to the screen later. This uh, I'll give some criticisms to BFI London. That could be my little soapbox rant. But first, the film. Now, do you want to give? So my little summary is that I fucking love this film, and we discussed this in our top five films that we're both big Nolan fans because we're both white and in our 20s,
I
right?
had Dark Knight, you had Interstellar, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And I am Interstellar was in my top five films of all time, and actually looking back at my top five, it would probably be higher on the list to be honest. But Interstellar is just one of my favorite films. Nolan's probably, I wouldn't say my favorite, but I probably have that most respect for Nolan.
He's got to be in the contention for like
100%,
all
100%.
timers now, though, right? Like surely, like I think he already qualified before this film. I think this was his sort of
Right.
magnum opus. Not to say this is my favorite film of his, because it's not, but I can't
Yeah.
deny, bloody, like this is his, like
It's also, yeah,
you
I think
know,
that's a good point. It's also very Chris Nolan, right?
yeah,
And I think that kind of puts some people off. But as Brandon would say before he saw this film, before I saw this film, but he'd seen it first, he was like, "This is just yours, mate. This is your film, mate."
yeah,
And I
because
was
you were
like,
kind
"Okay,
of describing it to me, and I was like, oh mate, that just ticks all your boxes. That's
yeah."
just-
And this film does indeed. And the thing is, I get, and actually, the more I've watched it, the more I've realized that this doesn't tick everyone's boxes,
Mm,
and that there's reasons that people maybe don't like this. But when I go into the cinema and I'm watching the film, like this ticks every box that I want,
yeah.
plus some more. So like, yeah, I just can't sing this thing's praises enough. I'll get into specifics, but like, you want to give your general thoughts on the film since I've given mine.
So I went in. I'm not the most knowledgeable guy, right? I don't study history or anything, so I knew barely anything about the real events from the film. All I knew is that Hiroshima got freaking nuked. That's it. That's pretty much it. Honestly, I didn't even know the name of the guy who developed the project. I didn't know what the Manhattan Project was. Didn't know anything. So going in was such a pretty much nothing going in except, oh, this is the nuke. So honestly, going in, what I thought was going to be the climax of the film was Hiroshima, but they don't do that, which I'm kind of glad. They're not. That's not the focus. The focus is getting to that, right, and post. So for me, I know I really like the film, and I'm going to rewatch it at some point, but I think I came out of it maybe like a 8.8 or something like that, like a very close to 9. Honestly, I'd probably just give it a 9 if I'm probably just being pretty. But if I'm to focus on tiny little negatives first, just to get them out of the way, is like, and again, I think this is more personal to me rather than the film itself. I think there's a lot of information that you need to have your brain switched on the whole film, or you're gonna kind of lose it, I feel. And it is quite hard because you do jump around time fairly often. They do a really good trick making it black and white when it's um, Strauss's POV and then
Strauss,
Strauss comes Strauss. Um,
S- Strauss.
Strauss. And then obviously in color when it's Oppenheimer's, and I really like that.
Yeah,
But it can be really easy to kind of lose
yeah.
where you are, which happened to me a couple times. Maybe that's just because I watched Barbie before that and my brain was dead. so,
Have
so
you seen? You've only seen it once, right?
I've only seen it once, but I might see it again
Okay.
tomorrow. So
I would say, having watched it. Also, I'll just say quickly, if we're putting numbers on this film, you said 8.9,
I, I'd,
8.8,
I'd, honestly, I'll just round to a 9, just to
9.
not be
Okay,
awkward about it.
I'm sitting at like 9.8,
Yeah,
9.9.
yeah.
Like
I'm
this is
honestly
very.
surprised it's not a 10 for you, honestly.
Uh,
I'm really surprised.
yeah. Okay.
Because
Well,
like to me, there's no such thing as a perfect film, right? Like even your favorite film surely has like nitpicks, you know. So like, I'm really surprised this doesn't like hit your like perfect film list kind of thing. I don't know. Like, would you say like I know it's like maybe early days, but would you say that's like top 5 potentially or top 10?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like, I feel like it's crazy that you don't give it a 10 then, like, because it's like, but I suppose it
Uh,
depends. I guess it
I
depends,
don't
like,
think.
how, because I don't know. It depends how you view it, I suppose.
I think the thing is this film is trying to be a lot, so you kind of have to bring it down whenever it does fail because it is doing a lot. Like you say, it's very complex in the way he's jumping around.
Right.
Whereas, so like for example, Back to the Future was on my list for top five. I would probably give that a 10 just because I can't find a problem with it,
Mm.
right? That's not how I grade things, but like that's that's basically the gist of it is that that is a for what it wants to be, that film is absolutely spot on the razor's edge, like perfect. 10. It cannot be better, right? This film that because it's trying to be what it is, and it is exactly what it's trying to be. It's a 10.
Yeah.
This is trying to be a lot, so I feel like there's maybe more that you can criticize about it in the way
All
it's
right.
structured because it's so complex in its construction.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be a snob, right? Like it's a complex film. You
Hmm.
like, and I think so that would probably bring it down, but I think in my case, I don't know how this will be with everyone, or if it will be with you. That's why I was asking about have you seen it more than once? Because on a rewatch, I find this film very rewarding because you know exactly when things are happening. Because I do remember the first time watching it, thinking, I know they do have because they have different times and they have different POVs,
Yeah.
which is not that helpful when you're not willing to put on like, oh, this is 1964. Well, none of it was 1964, but when this is like 1947, this is 1945, this is 1943. When you're not doing that, it can get a bit complex to kind of think about exactly when you are because you have the quote unquote court hearing, you have the cabinet hearing from Strauss's point of view, you have the Atomic Energy Committee hearing or like meeting for Oppenheimer that are both going on at different times. They're like a few years, they're like 5 years apart. Plus, you have the Oppenheimer stuff from the war and all that. Like, it's quite a bit.
Hmm.
But I on rewatch, I can't knock that anymore because I knew where I was all the time, and it when you're in that and everything clicks and everything, you're like, oh yeah, I'm never lost anymore. You can start paying attention to more things, and that's kind of what I felt is that the first time I was a bit like, oh shit, where am I? And then you would get it and you'd be like, all right, okay, okay, okay. Or sometimes you retroactively go, oh, well, that happened then, so we must have been in the past then or something. But this time I was like, right, I know exactly where I am as soon as the scene starts. Go, and it was a lot better. I felt so. I'd be interested to hear what you feel on a rewatch.
Yeah. I feel like I'm expecting to just understand it more because, like, the first time round, I was watching the film but also processing and like so much information at the same time that I've not heard before. Whereas now I will know that, you know.
Even the thing is even when you do know what's going on or know who people are or how they fit into things, you're still getting a lot of information,
Yeah.
even if you already know some of it, or even if you already know a majority of it,
Hmm.
you're still getting a lot within a scene. But yeah, and I really like there's like a lot of I think probably one of my favorite thing this film does, and this might not go over well with people who are uh, politically aligned, hard on an edge, right? Is this film I feel like beautifully walks the line of arguing for and against through Oppenheimer and the people
Yeah.
around him, and especially the scientists and the government relationship.
Yeah.
I think that is done absolutely to a
I
T,
agree
perfectly.
because I really get turned off by films that get political. Obviously, it depends on the context, right? Because obviously, this is
Because
Oppenheimer; it's a real life
well,
story. It makes sense, right?
this one's different, right? Because this one does get political,
Hmm.
but it gets political in such a good way.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
not just that things get political; it's that things get starkly political on one side when you feel like you're being talked at, whereas these characters are talking to each other and we're seeing it. I think that's the
yeah,
difference, right?
yeah. Which,
Sorry,
yeah,
not to cut you off, but
exactly.
I got excited.
No, I was just gonna, like, 'cause I really want to get on at this film today, but it's like Barbie, where Barbie feels like it's telling you their agenda, whereas this film's like, no, they're having a discussion about each side, and you're getting an equal amount of, side from each of the characters and stuff. Because again, I'm so out of the bubble. Like, I don't even know what a communist was before this film. Like, I don't know. Like, again,
And you're not alone
you
in
know what I
that,
mean?
right? And they even there's a lot of I've heard. Okay, so a thing about this film, and this will come back to your point about not knowing what that is.
Yeah.
Um, is that I do feel like that because it's such a nuanced point of view, and it is nuanced, right? That's not being mean a snob, right? This is actually like a nuanced point of view film, and I think the thing is that if you go in with predetermined views on the the Manhattan Project and the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a whole,
Hmm.
I do think you could quite easily pick out the things that are for your argument and quite easily shun the things against your argument. And you could quite easily create an echo chamber around this film. And I'm not pointing names, but like even the first time I saw this film, like I'm very interested in like World War II history, especially.
Yeah.
And I'm very I wouldn't say pro bomb, but I'm very like I don't think you can be pro bomb, but like I'm very like it was kind of a necessary evil. That's just where I am. But
Yeah, and I
I
think
know
the
that
film did a good job of conveying that as well. You know.
yeah, but it also did a great job of conveying the opposite
Well,
that
exactly.
well maybe
Yeah,
it's not necessary,
and that's where we go, where it's like they're arguing both sides.
and that's fair
Yeah.
enough. And I'll even say, and I'm not like dropping anyone in this, but like the first time I watched it, I was a bit like, yeah, like damn, that was rough. But like we know other people. I know of other people in our group that are say have different views on this, and they've come out with a more like reassured in their own values. Whereas this is not like I wouldn't say like it made me think about it again, right? And it makes you think about it in a different context because you're seeing it visually.
Hmm.
And it's that's one thing about history a lot of the time is that you can't you can't see it right all the time.
Yeah.
Like you can see relics and all that, but you can't see exactly how it was. Um, but yeah, this film does that fantastically,
Yeah.
and I think just that alone is just unbelievably. And that's not even really the aim of the film,
Hmm.
which is the
It's a biography at the
probably
end of the day. It's a
it
biopic.
is, but I think the crux of this film, right, is really it's about Strauss and Oppenheimer. That's really
Yeah.
the crux of it. It's really about Oppenheimer, obviously on his journey of creating the bomb, but also like coming to terms with it, which is probably the more obvious thing that I knew going in. But to be honest, I didn't even know who Strauss was when I went into this film,
Yeah.
um, and I don't think many people would, to be honest.
And I'm not going to forget. So,
Yeah, and well, part of that becomes from their performances as well,
well,
which is
honestly, that's my biggest positive out of this film is that pretty much every single performance freaking kills it to the point where I'm seeing a lot of Oscar potential here. Like I'm seeing many nominations going about in this film. Not even just for the acting, just throughout, but acting specifically. Like it's mad, man. And like as I've mentioned before, like I'm getting to script writing and stuff, and just like visualizing the script and hearing about how it's written in POV, and just imagine the actors having to process that and then put that on screen. Like that's a hard job, you know what I mean? So fair play to the actors. Like I don't think this was a situation where oh it's a good director, of course it's good. I think the actors 100% pulled their weight in this as well, as you can tell with them completely immersing themselves within the characters. Like I'm not watching Kelly Murphy, I'm watching Robert Oppenheimer. You know what I mean? Like that's him. I'm not watching. There was not a moment where I thought it was Tony Stark in this film. Like I saw Strauss. You know what I mean? So every and that's insane because it's a freaking stat cast. There's like what would you call them? A stars, A listers, like A listers all over this film. Yet maybe maybe only two of them take me out, and even then they drag me back in. Like after they have their little first scene, for example, Rami Malek being one of them. When I first saw him, I was like, "Oh, it's freaking Freddie Mercury!" And then he has his scene later on in the film, and then I'm like, "Oh, right, okay." I'm completely like, I'm totally freaking sucked in. So I think for me, the acting performances were the highlight. But from a film filled with highlights, it says a lot. But yeah, for sure.
I think that's actually a good point to bring up for my next point. Is well, it's kind of a follow on from the last point as well. Is that this is very much. a J. Robert Oppenheimer film. This is not about the bomb, and everyone who's seen that now knows that.
Yeah.
I get the argument because I went to see this with a bunch of with a bunch of work friends, and they were like, "Oh, the bomb was only on it for like 30 seconds." I'm like, "Yeah." Like I could get why, and 100% the marketing was placed on the bomb, right?
Yeah.
You can't. I don't know how much involvement, if any, Nolan has on that, but obviously marketing the bomb and then having it be like a 3 second thing is a bit of a shame. But
But as well, it's like as on being on the marketing team, what you like that's what people are gonna come. That's what's gonna sell tickets. You know what I mean? Like call it call it false advertising. I wouldn't call it false advertising by any means, but like because that's what hooked me is like, oh, this could destroy the world, like that line where he's like, oh, I don't know, near zero. You know, like that line alone got me hooked
what do
into
you
this
want from
film.
theory alone?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, man, mate. The freaking script, man, is so good.
it's
But
really good. I will say
to
there
your
are
point though,
on a third watch. Okay, I'll get onto criticisms in a bit. I'll log that in my brain. But very much with like Rally Malik and stuff, it's when you're on a rewatch, and I think this is where the rewatch is really helpful, is that you know that that moment's coming when the scientists behind, well, some of them, not all of them, but some of the scientists, like Dr. Hill, who Rami Malek plays, turn on Strauss because of his actions. And I think it's I didn't notice this the first time, obviously, because you're not looking out for it, but the third time, there's multiple occasions in this film where Oppenheimer treats Dr. Hill badly, right?
hmm
And I think that's Nolan. Like, if you're looking at like the bells and whistles and how this thing works, I think that's Nolan like putting a red herring out that by the end of the film, because they bring out Hill and they keep talking about Hill, and he's like, "When's Dr. Hill coming? Is he gonna he's gonna be for you?" Yep. They bring that up a few times, and then at the end, you're like, "Oh, here's Dr. Hill. He's gonna be in favor," and then he's completely against, and he's like the start of the end for Strauss. And there's a few moments throughout the film where Oppenheimer isn't a dick to him, but like he puts him in his like he doesn't put him in his place, but he puts him down, right? And I guess he is kind of a dick. That maybe he is a dick to them then. But Hill doesn't take that as like a petty judgment of him, and he doesn't try to ruin Oppenheimer's career the way Strauss does. Even though Strauss actually hasn't, even though Oppenheimer actually hasn't ruined Strauss's chances. He made fun of him that once in court about the sandwiches, but and the isotopes. But like, there's a few moments. Like, there's one moment where he smacks the clipboard out of Rami Malek's hand. Cillian Murphy does, and he's like makes a scene in a hotel. And then there's another one where he's like, "Do you really have to write that down?" He grabs his pen off him and he throws it in his pocket. And you see him be like, "Oh, this guy's a real fucking dick." But then he's like in favor of him at the end, and it's such a great. That's a really great way of having like the kind of relationship that these scientists have and the respect they have for each other, versus they've seen this animosity towards someone in their group, and this is them now rejecting that publicly. And that's such a great moment. It's such a great little like background
yeah,
thing going on that you don't pick up the first time, but you definitely pick up on the second time, or at least the third time. So I love that. I will say Rami Malek and Robert Downey Jr. are probably the two that stuck out to me the most the first time.
for sure. Yeah.
Again, on the second watch, even Alden Ehrenreich did stick out to me a bit.
Mm.
On the third rewatch, I think I'm kind of used to them being the characters now, so they don't stick out nearly as much. But the first time, I will say they did definitely stick out. But
Yeah.
uh, a few criticisms. I'll go into a few criticisms because I haven't given it a 10, right? And if I'm not giving it a 10, I should really state why. I do
Yeah.
think there are some lines in the film that I don't like. There's a few lines where I get the point they're getting across, but I think on a rewatch kind of makes it come across a bit. I don't. It's definitely not preachy because it's not trying to like send a message. It's just trying to establish Oppenheimer's relationship to the people around him.
Mm.
And there's a lot of very early in the movie, especially, there's a lot of people going, "Oh, you're bigger than us, Robert. Like you're the biggest thing this world's ever seen, but you just haven't reached your potential yet." And I'm like, you don't need to tell us that. Like, we're here for the bomb already. We're already here for the Manhattan Project, and there's a lot. I don't know. I didn't notice it the first time, but definitely today I was a bit like his neighbors, like, "Oh, this is the price that you pay for genius," sort of thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that one's not as bad, but that's like the first time it happens. And then you get it a few more times, and it almost seems like, well, one time's enough. You don't really need to keep telling me that everyone thinks Oppenheimer's like hot shit. You know,
Mm.
it just it feels a little bit clunky at times with that, where it's like you're you're not just. I to be fair, I do like the one that Lawrence says, where he's like, you're not just self-important, you're actually important. I like that one,
Yeah.
but there's a few moments like that that I don't think land as good as that moment that Lawrence has, but they're saying the exact same thing. So I like I'm not a big fan of some of those. So I'll be harsh and knock a little point off there. But um, but yeah, I definitely. The other thing I think this film just does great is it makes me want to learn more about Oppenheimer. It makes me want to read the book American Prometheus. It makes me want to like know
Yeah.
more.
And that's what the book's based off, right? From Nolan reading that book, right?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, man. I also want to give a shout out to the score. Freaking our boy.
mate. Ludwig Göransson has been knocking it out of the park with
Yeah,
everything,
yeah, man.
everything.
And keep in mind, like Nolan usually has Hans Zimmer, right? That's usually his boy, but now
Well,
it's
handpicked,
uh,
Ludwig.
mad, man. And honestly, freaking, I didn't feel a big difference in uh in what do you call it? Bugger. Completely lost all my train of thought.
What
Um,
do you mean between Hans Zimmer and
like
Ludwig Göransson?
like I mean like difference in wait, cut this part. um, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Style?
Nah, not style. Just
No?
just like it's like they're you would expect it not to be as good as Hans Zimmer, but honestly, like it might be one of my favorite
Up the
Nolan
bar.
scores. You know?
Yeah, I will say, like the moments where he's thinking kind of on screen
Yeah.
are like incredible.
It's when the tension builds, like those scenes as well. Where you're like, oh,
Yeah,
but there's no payoff in the theme. You know, it keeps you going. And I love that. You know,
yeah,
there's
and
no
I will
there's no
say,
like big. Oh, this is the iconic moment of the song. There's none of that.
right,
You know, it just keeps going. But that's like I'm assuming that's where he's trying to represent what's going on in Oppenheimer's brain. Like it never stops. It just keeps flowing. You know what I mean? It never goes to sleep. And as we can see from those dreams that he has or visions where he's just there's constant. Obviously, I did not fully understand what was going on. I just assumed he's just doing this science. But,
yeah.
but
But I think that's a really like I don't know if that's been done before as well. Like
yeah,
I've never seen that in at least a mainstream
all
film.
practical as well. So cool, man.
Um, I will say I'm not entirely sure if this film is all practical. I'll be fucking amazed. I do think he's been very specific in his language. That quote where he says there are no like computer generated shots, right?
Mm,
And that is ambiguous enough, I think, that people have taken it as, or he maybe has said as there's no CG in this film. I don't think, obviously, that's not been clarified, and I don't know why that is, but no, I don't think that means there are no CG elements in this film. I think that means there are no solely CG elements in that film, like solely CG shots. I think there's definitely been, if there's not, I wouldn't say definitely. I think there's probably not been no CG touch ups to anything.
right.
Because the other thing is as well, I know that prosthetics are really good and all that, and the makeup's amazing in the film.
Hmm.
But like watching it again with like very young Cillian Murphy, like I wouldn't be surprised if there's some very light de-aging going on as well,
Right. I see.
because he does look very young and stuff like that. And like that could be a product of the makeup department, and if it is, like like good fucking job. But I also wouldn't be surprised if there was a bit of like digital nip and tuck in with those forehead lines and all that. But yeah, and I especially like like you're saying, like the thoughts going on, and then I really like how they start off in like pitch blackness, and it's him in his bed, and he's like, "Oh, I was like having trouble with thinking about the universe, and it was like really getting to me."
Yeah.
And he's in his bed, and then gradually it starts to kind of he starts to kind of integrate it, where he like opens his eyes and he sees it in the real world. It's not just in like absent blackness anymore, and that's kind of I take that as him kind of establishing his ideas and starting to come to terms with them and starting to come to terms with how to live your life and have those ideas,
Yeah.
sort of thing. But yeah, I love that. I also really love I think the opening shot and the final shot,
The final shot. Yeah, man. Oh,
unbelievable.
oh.
But the opening shot is like, it's just a puddle, right, with like little raindrops.
Mm.
But at the very end of the film, there's also a pond with little raindrops when he's with Einstein. But there's also a moment in and this isn't like this isn't some miraculous thing that I've discovered. This is like clearly in the film. Um, there's a moment where he's looking at the map for, I think they're discussing the H bomb, and they're circling targets in Russia. And he looks at the map and he sees like raindrops on the map, and they look like the raindrops he's looking at in the pond or in the puddle. And I love that, like he's talking to Einstein, and it's like the pond is like the visual representation of like him thinking about the end of the world, because there's raindrops all over the pond and they're like constant sort of thing, and that's him like visualizing like the detonation of the world,
Yeah.
and that's him his looking over the pond is him like thinking about that and doing his like 1,000 yards there. But just stuff like that, where like the opening shot is like kind of symbolic of the world he kind create with the bomb he makes, and
Right.
just like, again, very snobby, but I like it a lot.
Really.
But the I will say my 100% my favorite scene in the what's I would say it's a sequence because it's multiple shots, multiple scenes, but it's the very tail end of one shot, and then like the next one is like my favorite sequence in the film, is the speech he gives after the bomb has been successfully tested.
Mhm.
Oh no, no, this is actually after the
Yeah.
first bombing in
Yeah.
uh, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I think it's after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He gives the speech, and he's like, "Oh, it was a success, and like the Japanese didn't know what hit them, and I wish we'd only managed to get the Germans." And he's very like, again, very obvious, but he's very he's the kind of poster boy, and he's like given into that to tell people what they want to hear, but he's like losing his shit at the same time. And
Yeah.
I love how it starts so like he's just on the podium and the background starts to rumble,
Yeah.
and you get that amazing score. And I will say, apart from the score as well, the sound effects and the sound design in this film are fucking amazing, like fantastic. Like there's a few times where I specifically noticed it, and I was like, "Holy shit, that is some real good sound design."
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is controversial. I will say this. This could be totally wrong. I think I would rather have better audio in a film than better visuals.
Interesting.
I think if you put like IMAX level audio in regular cinema screens, your experience would be much more elevated than if you had weaker audio but a much better screen.
That's interesting.
I think I think
Yeah.
that's my view at the moment. Because when I went, I've seen a few films in IMAX now, and the only scenes that I find memorable in terms of IMAX, not the only scenes, but definitely some scenes that I find very memorable in IMAX, are scenes where the audio is very like all encompassed by the sound system. It's very deep in the bass. Like this film has a lot of bass, and like especially with the pattern of the footsteps on
Mhm.
the bleachers. When you're in IMAX, you can like hear individual footsteps. It's not just a noise; it's like a total rumble, and you can feel all of it. And you can
Yeah.
feel like you can hear like individual noises and how they're different, and it's really weird compared to just like you've seen it in normal cinema, and it's just like it's just a general rumble.
Mhm.
But I will say as well, I did notice this, is that when they do the rumble, obviously this is not, again, I think this is semi obvious, but that whole experience is a replication of the bomb, right?
Right.
That whole sequence is him when he's thinking about the bomb and coming to terms with it. That whole sequence is the bomb happening, because when you and he makes this very obvious, I think, is that when he's on the podium and the light flashes and everyone disappears and it goes silent. That's exactly what happens when the bomb first detonates. Is that you see a flash of light and it goes silent, and then the sound of the crowd comes back, and it's like, and that is the sound, the shockwave hitting the people in the bunkers, and that's the replication of that. And you have the pitter patter, and he gets that in his head, and that's like the after shock, like the after echo of the bomb that kind of lingers, and it's all very like that whole sequence is a replication of the bomb in like audio and visually in his head, which I love. And that scene in general, I think that is 100%. That is one of my favorite scenes in cinema now,
Um,
not just this film. And because every time I watch it, I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, America, yes. And then like within seconds, I have a lump in my throat, and I'm like, oh my god,
yeah,
like no, every time, even when I know it's coming, I'm like, yes, and then oh fuck. Um, but yeah, that's unreal how good that scene is. But I think the scene just before that I referenced was it's when the first time in this film that really sets me off is when he phones Emilia Clarke. He phones his wife, and he says, "Take in the sheets," and you see her face,
Emily
and that
Blunt.
yeah, that gets me so hard when you see her face, and you're
Mm,
like, oh shit, like it's real, yeah,
yeah.
it's so
I
good.
want to give a shout out to bloody Matt Damon in this film as well because he was one of my favorites. Too, like so
Yeah,
much passion, so much passion in his lines.
he gets a lot of the humor as well,
He
which
does,
he
he
handles
does.
really well.
Also, another shout out, Jason Clark. He was freaking sick in this film as well. I totally bought him as like the annoying lawyer dude, who's just like asking the tough questions, putting you into
Yeah,
like tricky
Roger Rob.
situations and stuff. So good. Honestly, those were probably my favorite scenes. Um, him sort of questioning them and stuff, and then Emily Blunt kind of Uno cards it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again in that scene, you have the flash of light, you have the silence, and then you have the shouting going on, right?
Mm,
Where that becomes the rumble of the bomb. And I don't know if what I took out of it when I saw it the third time was that those are kind of representations of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. Is that there are three detonations in this film that we see. Two of them are in Oppenheimer's head.
right.
The first one we actually see is the Trinity test. The second one is the podium sequence, and the third one is when he's in the room. You get three flashes in this film, so like that's kind of in my head is that the first one is the test, the Trinity test, the real one. The second one is like Hiroshima, and the third one's Nagasaki.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know if that's. I would assume that's intent. I don't
Interesting.
know if it's a coincidence, but I'm going to say that's intentional
Yeah.
because there's three bombs that got detonated, and there's three bombs in this film, quote unquote, like
Mm,
bomb sequences. But I love that. I love it. Speaking of Roger Robb in that scene as well, I love that scene where he starts to like he gets the flash in that room as well, and then like he has the anger, like the aggressive Roger Robb coming at him,
yeah.
and then it flicks back to him just like normal. I love that scene as well. But yeah, I think they were amazing. I even just like the background, the guy in the committee, the chair, and you can see clues of him because again going into the third watch, he's going to be the one that votes in favor of Oppenheimer, and the other two aren't. If you watch them in the background, even in shots that they're kind of out of focus in, you can see him like nodding along and kind of getting the idea, and he's a bit like, "Yeah, we are treating this guy unfairly." And the other
Yeah.
two are just like, "Nah, we're just here to just this is what we're here to do. We're going to do it," you know.
Right. Right.
And there's a few lines in this that I really like. Like you can tell, you can tell Nolan's one of those directors that doesn't bite off more than he can chew intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
Is that he's not just using phrases where he thinks they fit. Like he knows what these terms mean. He knows what a communist is, and he knows how to make joke about. Because like one of the jokes about the communist is like he asks her, "Oh, he says something about there being a difference between intellectual communists and the average communist," and she's like, "Oh, I can't tell you the difference between that." And then the
Right.
guy laughs, and you know what I mean? It's like a very like if you, it's a very if you don't, it's still a joke. You might not get it, but if you know how the Americans view communism, especially in the 40s and 50s, it's quite funny. But I really like that joke.
Yeah.
Uh,
In fact, that's something I want to bring up as well. Is I think the sort of set design and the presentation of that era is fantastic. There's not a single moment where I don't feel like it's set in the 40s. You know,
it's flawless
so
to the
done.
point that nothing about the film takes you out.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think kind of the way I've been viewing the podcast is kind of the same as I want it to be like when I'm in my head, I'm like, the only reason someone should be clicking off this is because we're not interested. Like there
Yeah,
should be nothing else in the way, right? And I think that's what this film does really well is that nothing gets in the way. And that's kind of I would say semi rare nowadays. Is there's always even in a really good film, there's always at least like one scene in the way where you're like, ah,
right,
like the first one that springs to mind is like the weird like women Avengers assemble in Endgame. And it's not like
right.
I don't get annoyed by it, but I'm a bit like, yeah, I get taken out. I get taken out of the big alien space battle because women women are in the same place in the
I
battle.
get what you mean. Yeah.
Like I'm not making a statement. That's just how I feel,
No,
right?
I get what you mean.
But
It's just like a random
yeah,
kind of thing
or
that happened.
in the film, that film's loaded with CGI, and some of it looks great, and some of it doesn't.
Yeah,
And I would say like the Pepper Potts stuff doesn't look great.
yeah,
She doesn't look great in that suit. Uh, and that kind of takes you out a bit. And it's like you have all these little things going on that make take you out, and this film has none of them.
hmm yeah,
And it does it on a budget a third of the size,
man.
which is mad. I cannot believe this is $100 million film.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
But yeah, I would say I don't know. Like I don't know if I could recommend this film to everyone, but if I don't, I feel like I'm not doing my doing it justice.
I know exactly what you mean because I, honestly, I don't think it is for everyone, as we know, because some of our friend group liked it, but nowhere near as much as we did. And some, like, I mean, I think our friend group's pretty split. There's most half of us big fan, other half meh. It's okay, it's good. You know, no one's saying it's bad. I feel like you're actually stupid if you're gonna
Yeah.
say it's a bad film. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not calling it perfect or anything, but to actively say it's a bad film, I think you're off your nut. You know, like, come on now. Um, but yeah, man, yeah, I'm really happy that I saw the film for sure. It's my only regret is seeing it second after Bart because I feel like if I went in with my brain like fresh, I would have enjoyed it more. But that's why I might rewatch it tomorrow anyway, just to get that second
Yep.
experience. So
And I will say, I did say I would come back to a criticism of the BFI cinema.
no,
So the IMAX experience I had. So I went to the BFI IMAX 70 millimeter film print that they're actually rolling. And one I do really like the when you're sitting there, and I really like hearing the projector go. Like you can hear it spinning.
mm,
I like that. But it did take. It was weird. It was like it took a few minutes for my eyes to adjust to it being film. It was a bit like uh, I don't know how to explain it. It was a bit. It almost felt like a strobe light a little bit. I don't know if that's a product of the cinema, an issue with the cinema, or if that's just how films are. Um, but I don't think to my knowledge I've ever seen an actual non-digital film in the cinema. I
right,
don't think. But it took a few minutes to my eyes to adjust, and then the cinema is very it's a very tall screen, and it almost feels like more of a 4:3 aspect ratio at times because it's a very square screen rather than a very like cinematic like 16 by 9
mm,
um, that you're kind of used to. But one thing is it one of the big marketing things about the IMAX was that they said this entire thing was filmed on IMAX cameras, right? And not a lot of this film utilizes the full aspect ratio and the full size of the cinema screen, where it got to the point where there was like entire scenes that were just like taken up. Like if you cut off the top and bottom, it would probably be just over half the screen.
right.
And it was a bit, I was a bit confused. I don't know if that was just my expectations being too high because I've never seen an IMAX film in that aspect before on a screen that big. But my interpretation was that, like, because the first scene is it opens on the full screen being utilized, and like a lot of the start of the film is for the first few minutes, but then it just goes back to kind of normal. It looks like a normal enough screen, and it really confused me because I was like, the best shots in the film and my favorite shots in the film seen in IMAX were all the ones that used the whole screen. So I don't really understand why they wouldn't stick to that the whole time.
I see.
I don't know. It really confused me. I guess maybe some of the shots would look a bit wonky because it's very square and it's very like focused on the center of the screen because and that tended to be when it was used is that whenever you had that kind of establishing shot in a landscape it was used or if you had a very close up shot of like Cillian Murphy or Robert Downey Jr. and they were like center screen. That tended to be when it was used. But because your screen's so tall, your your kind of aspect ratio is jumping around like a large amount. And I found that a little bit jarring at times. And I kind of wish it had just used the whole thing all the time. But I don't know if that would look as good, but that's what I thought it was going to be. So I don't know. I was a bit. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit disappointed in that.
Yeah,
But the shots that do use, like I said, the shots that do use the full screen, they were amazing. They were unbelievable, and they are by far the clearest, like best looking things I've ever seen on a screen ever. And the score coming through and the sound effects coming through the sound system there was amazing. So that's kind of why I say like I think the sound system does a lot, and I think especially the cinema we used to go to, and this is not me rapping on them, but the cinema we used to go to, there was always audio issues in my opinion,
yeah. Got
and
unlucky.
even once, because like we'd went and I never noticed it, and then we went again and something broke in our screening, and then every time we went subsequently, it was like it wasn't quite right, and I feel like whatever they did when they fixed it, they hadn't calibrated it properly, or they'd replaced it with poorer speakers or something, because it felt very thin, the audio, and I feel like when the audio is that thin but the visuals are that good, and this is specifically Avatar, we went and seen it at the time, but every film after that felt very thin. And then when you get in an IMAX cinema and it's very like bassy, like this film's very bassy, especially the score at times, and like the bomb, like big impact moments, like the bomb, stuff like that. Those are, I think you need the really good sound system. You need it to be, and it really. I'm not saying you like maybe you don't need it, but it really elevates the experience for me. And I feel like a lot of cinemas are very concerned with we need IMAX screens and we need 4DX and we need this and we need that and we need Dolby Atmos and all that. And it's like maybe you just need a better fucking sound system, mate. Because whenever you have a good sound system is when I have the best experience in the cinema.
Yeah.
Um, I like a good
Freaking
audio.
Top Gun
That
Maverick.
is
That's my favorite sound
right.
experience in a film. Like that took me in. Like, oh, the freaking seats were vibrating and everything.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like that, it's great, right?
Yeah,
But like, I think a lot of cinemas sleep on that, even though they call themselves IMAX. That I don't think that should come with the experience.
yeah. Mm,
Uh, there's my soapbox. But again, I did say we would spend. I think we could probably easily do an episode on Oppenheimer
definitely,
alone.
definitely.
So I'll maybe cut my bit on Oppenheimer short there, just because I this is already an hour and I I could just keep going for another.
We
But
still got stuff in the stuff in the bag.
we got stuff in the mystery bag for you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what's in your mystery bag, Brandon?
um, right. We'll do Haunted Mansion next, I guess. Could be a much shorter bloody review than Oppenheimer, that's for sure. Because I do not have a lot to say about this film because very average, honestly. Like I won't lie, I didn't tell you this, bro. I was sleeping again, man. So
This
I
guy.
slept again. I think I missed maybe 20 minutes.
See, part of me is like, if you're sleeping in a film, that's not a good view in the film in the first place.
Yeah,
But I'm also like, you might have missed a really good part in the film at the
yeah,
same time.
yeah, but yeah, but it's not like I'm sleeping like right at the start or or even like 20 minutes after the start. It's always around after the half-hour
Just for,
mark.
just for context to the audience, I don't think Brandon's ever fallen asleep in a cinema since I've known him. And in the last few months, was it, what was it? Was the first film Indiana Jones?
First, it was Indiana Jones, then
He
Elemental
fell
for ten
asleep.
minutes, and
He fell
then
asleep in Indiana Jones, and like
yeah,
not every film, but quite a few times
there's
since
been
he's
a
fallen
few.
asleep.
It's been Indiana Jones, Elemental, even Turtles got me for 10 minutes. I
You
blame
never
I
said
blame
that,
that
did
I
you?
blame that for me being tired though. I don't blame the film for
Right.
that. And Haunted Mansion, so yeah, I've been pretty bad for that. It's not even comfy seats, like it's very like straight seats, and I'm just like, oh,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like,
Okay,
out.
just quickly, another diversion. BFI, IMAX London, get cooler seats. Fucking roasting in that cinema. That was 3 hours, and I was sweating.
Are they like
That
leather
was,
seats or fabric?
yeah, they were leather, and they were fucking hot.
Um,
Hot. Get some air conditioning. Air conditioning might be a bit noisy, but get something. Get I don't know, just throw an ice pack at me. I don't know. It was really fucking hot, like really hot,
Jeez, man.
and I could see other people leaning off the seats to like not stick to them, and I'm like, one, I know they're not getting cleaned in between screenings. There's not enough time in between screenings, and two, that stank and it's hot.
Stanky.
It's a really good experience, but that was really hot.
Yeah.
So get something cooler. Anyway, back to Haunted
Yeah,
Mansion.
man. So yeah, for context, I've not seen the original one, so this was I don't know if it's a direct remake or if it's just
I think
inspired by.
no. So I think well, anyway. So I think so. The ride in Disneyland came around in 1969, right?
Right.
It's been a kind of cult classic. Well, I wouldn't say it's just a classic amongst Disney fans,
Yeah.
right, and Disney Parks fans. And in 2003, Disney realized that, or they just out of fucking blue just wanted to start making films about the rides in the parks. So they picked three, and they made Country Bear Jamboree, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Haunted Mansion. For some reason, Haunted Mansion, they went with Eddie Murphy and made it like a shitty comedy
See,
that some
I
people I
didn't
guess
know
didn't
it
like.
was known for being bad.
So I think it's kind of just it's one of those films that you got put on in
Kind of
like
go
a
on with
rainy
it.
day at primary school.
Yeah,
You know, it was never it was never meant for anything else.
I see.
But Pirates of the Caribbean is the total opposite, where it's like it's like that as well, but it's a fucking masterpiece of a film.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But the Country Bear Jamboree is just complete ass as well. Um, but that wasn't supposed to be a masterpiece either. So it's like they had these two duds and like one absolute masterpiece that went on to create like one of the biggest franchises ever. And for some reason, well, Guillermo del Toro, he's had one in development for like 10 years or some crap, which is a shame because he's apparently a massive fan of the ride. So he would
Mm,
have probably done it more justice. But for context, I haven't seen the new one, but I know a lot more about it. It's my favorite ride, okay, at the parks.
mm,
I know a lot about it. I like the history of it. But so I'll get all the references when I go see the film that link to the ride.
yeah,
So what I'm thinking is that this film probably takes a little bit of inspiration from the original film, but it probably tries to take more from the ride itself.
I see. I see.
So because there's a kind of background narrative goes on in the ride. So and they had a comic series that was really good that Marvel did, maybe 2018, 2017, something like that. That was really I really like that. So they didn't go with that, but there is background lore they can draw from a little bit, like an extended universe. But if you're not familiar, most people are not familiar with that. So like, I don't really know who this film's for.
Yeah, because like you're not really because if from what you're saying, the original one's not known for being good, so you're not exactly getting nostalgia for growing up with a good film. I guess you're just buying it on the ride, but at the same time, like, is the ride really that famous to really draw in
I would
a
say
film crowd? You know what I mean?
it's iconic in America,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's iconic worldwide.
Hmm.
And I think that might be part of the problem with us viewing it, or like the British public, because people are going to be aware that this is a ride in Disney. There are quite a few people are going to be aware, right? But
Yeah.
if you said like Disney's Haunted Mansion in America, I feel like it would have a much bigger. I mean, obviously, it hasn't had that big a draw because it's not done that well at the box office. But
Yeah.
if you said that right, people would know what you're talking about. Whereas I'm not sure that would be the case here in the UK.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Like I'm aware of it, but again, I don't know if that's because of the original one, and I've just always been aware of that film in the back. Um, but yeah, anyway, so the film I think is pretty freaking average. I don't want to say it's bad because I don't think it is. It's just your run of the mill just film. Honestly, I can't even. There's not even a precise word I can use. Like I don't know. I've heard some people kind of enjoy it. I get it if you're into that sort of. I would call it quirky humor. I would
So,
say.
well, that's kind of what the ride is. So
Yeah.
will I give you a little bit of vibe of the ride, and then
Yeah.
you'll
Go
tell me if that's
for it.
in the film.
Yeah.
So the ride starts off as a kind of horror homage, right? You kind of get classic monsters, classic ghosts, but you can't see any of the ghosts. But it's meant to be a bit more spooky. It's not meant to be horror, but it's meant to be spooky enough for like young kids to go on. You get a little bit of mystery. You get a séance room, and the sequence after the seance room becomes a kind of comedy. That's the kind of
Right.
vibe of the ride, and that's kind of, as a fan of the ride, that's what I wanted this film to be, was kind of start off as a horror. You get to the Madame Leota, the crystal ball woman,
Yeah. Jamie Lee
and
Curtis.
oh, is it really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, she doesn't fit that in my head. I mean, she might be good, but that's not who I would have put in my head.
She's fine.
Um,
Yeah.
but you go through a séance with her, and then the ghosts start to become accustomed to your presence, and
Hmm.
then they welcome you into the mansion, and then you can see them, sort of thing. That's the idea.
Yeah, honestly, you're not far off from
But
the film,
I'm
to be honest.
assuming, like, was there like singing stone busts in the film?
Singing Stone Busts. I don't think so. Not from what I can
No,
recall.
they were in the original film.
Right, right.
The Hitchhiker Ghost, he's an original animatronic from the old ride, from the 1969 ride.
Hmm.
He got taken out just before it premiered because he didn't work as a visual effect. Because,
Alright.
so just for context, so the ride is very based on visual effects and kind of like illusion.
Illusions. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen some on YouTube that looks smart.
And they're really well done, especially for their age. They're really well done.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so he originally, his illusion didn't really work that well because where they placed him, the light, you could see both heads, so it didn't look like one head was transplanted onto the other. Anyway, recently the kind of fan base has kind of been like, "Oh, we want to see him back." So for the 50th anniversary, they brought him back, and so that's why he's kind of the villain, is because he kind of has this cult status among fans as being like a lost. He's kind of basically like a deleted scene of the ride, and people were like, "It's like, like." Some people kind of, they're like, "Oh, why did this deleted scene get deleted from the film? Why didn't they put it back in?" And then you get a director's cut. That's kind of what they did with the ride,
Hmm.
and so that's why he's kind of the villain of this film, is because he's kind of iconic to fans that way.
I see.
The problem is he doesn't have any. He's probably the only character in the ride, the only main character in the ride that doesn't have any story. So I
Yeah.
guess I guess that gives you a clean slate for the character, but also why is Jared Leto him?
Or,
It's like,
or so I didn't even recognize Jared Leto as him until I saw the credits. I was like, what?
stop casting Jared Leto in
I
things.
know,
Don't
it's what's
don't,
going on,
and
man.
it's Disney as well. Stop it. Like, don't put him in Tron. Like, don't do it. Bring back the other guys. Like,
Honestly.
don't put Jared Leto in Tron, please.
You know who I do want to see more of? Owen Wilson and Danny DeVito as a duo. That was the highlight of the film. Those two are good together, man. As you can imagine, if they can come on now, like honestly, the group themselves was a pretty good group. It was very diverse in the sense of different types of people. In the sense of, oh, there's like a kid. You've got the spiritual woman. You've got the the dude with the troubled past. Like you've got all that. Rosario Dawson's also really good in this film as well. Not that she completely stands out, but she does a good job for what her role kind of asks for. Just the motherly role, essentially. Um, yeah, honestly, like, the visual effects wasn't. I don't want to say they're bad. They're just not
I'd assume they're
memorable, I
quite
suppose.
campy, were they? Like
Yeah, yeah.
blue ghosts, that sort of
I
thing.
do remember some practical effects in the sense, but not in the way you'd think. They're more just like costumes. Like there was definitely costumes used. Um,
Was there a bride in it, like a ghost bride?
nah, I don't remember Bride.
Mate, what the fuck? I
I
could have
remember
made such a
Bride,
better film out of
unless I
this.
was asleep during that point.
Oh, maybe. But like, these are like, see, if I was doing like as a fan of the film, as the ride, these are the points I would be hitting, not just for like fan service, but there's like actual lore that you can draw from.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, there's a whole ride in Paris based on the bride. Like, it's like, why are they not? Why are they making? If they're why are they making a haunted mansion film, quote unquote, for fans, but then not using any of the available lore?
yeah.
That seems really
They
strange.
definitely focus on the human characters for sure. Like they go through their
Which is fair
backstories and
enough.
character
But
arcs, rather
what
than
about
the ghosts.
hitchhiking ghosts? Was there three ghosts hitchhiking?
Nah,
No. What the fuck, bro? Nah,
nah.
mate. I'm not seeing this film. Fuck it. You're not getting my money, Disney. You've disappointed me this year already with fucking
Yeah,
Indiana
of
Jones.
all the
You're
films,
not,
I wouldn't
you're not
waste on
fucking
this
getting my
one.
money, you bastard. And you know what I'm gonna do? I never advocate for illegal pirating, and I'm not gonna today. But I'm gonna say I'm not giving you money, but I'm gonna watch your film. Put it that way.
There you go. There you go.
Um,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Fuck you,
I
Jared.
know, yeah, Robert saw it today, and he fairly enjoyed it. From what he says, he said it was cute. I don't know if that's the best. I don't know if I don't know if that's the best compliment you could give a film, but
It's cute.
I mean, I read it. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that good? Is that a good thing? It's cute.
We'll have to probe him what that
I
means.
guess
But
it's like it's a very. The thing is, it's clearly targeting for a young audience. So it's like if the young
fair enough.
audience enjoys it, fair enough. It's not for me. I'm always going to have an eye out for that. It's just like our Turtles review, you know, like the
Right.
Turtles were clearly advocated for a younger audience. We could still enjoy it, but clearly for a younger audience. But I can't really rag on it for that because it knows what it's going for. It'd be like us complaining about Paw Patrol. You know what I mean? Like it's like
Yeah, fair.
freaking for kids, man.
I will say,
You know?
just as a final thought, having not seen the film, but being a fan of the ride, um, the idea that this is what has come to fruition after this being in development hell, especially with someone like Guillermo del Toro tied on,
Yeah,
having that he's just won an Oscar for his Pinocchio film,
yeah.
or
And
Oscar
Shape of Water before that as well.
and Shape of Water, and I haven't seen Shape of Water, I can't comment on that, but I really liked the Pinocchio film, and it was kind of weird in kind of the right ways.
Mm,
And I feel like having been a really established filmmaker and a big fan of this ride, I can't imagine it. I can imagine it going wrong, but like I can't imagine it going wrong in very wrong ways. And especially when you hear that name and you're like, oh, this is kind of what I was expecting from a Haunted Mansion film. To hear that it's not, they're not, it doesn't feel like they're trying is really disappointing
yeah,
because
it's
even
definitely
if they're not,
phoned in for sure.
yeah, and I at least know that if Guillermo had done it, he wouldn't have phoned it in, even if it was bad.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it's worse for me to feel that they've phoned it in than just like a big swing and a miss.
Mm,
So as a fan of the property, that is disappointing.
yeah.
I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So I think I gave it a 5 because it's like I wouldn't call it bad, but it's just mid, you know, just a mid film. I'm really glad I saw sort of Gran Turismo after it. So that definitely like gave me a little bit of a boost. But yeah, man. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say about it. To be honest, I would be interested to hear Robert's thoughts because we really haven't heard much. But maybe you can mention it down the line sometime. I'm not sure.
Well, I've got three more films, but they're all old, so I'm just going to blast them
Go
quickly.
for them, mate.
So,
I've got
just
one
for
small
context,
one after, but that won't take long to cover.
okay.
So, and then
So,
we can go.
two of these, well, technically Oppenheimer's a biopic as well, but I've been watching biopics because, for context, I'm trying to write one.
Ooh.
Which, oh yeah, um, I'm not good, but we'll get there. But I was just trying to see like what can you get away with in a biopic, especially a musical one. Hint, hint. Um, so my next one is Walk the Line because I hadn't seen that, and I've heard it's really good, and I'm also a Johnny Cash fan. I'm not a major Johnny Cash fan, but I like a lot of Johnny Cash. The only thing is I don't really. What tends to happen when I really like someone with music is I tend to like know a lot about them as well. But I don't really have that with Johnny Cash. I know a lot of his songs, but I don't know too much about Johnny Cash himself. Apart from that fucking hilarious photo of him in the bush, high with the cake. But that's one of my favorite photos in existence. But Walk the Line was all right. I'd say it's all right. It's like I think in the way that Oppenheimer is not about the bomb, this film is not so much about Johnny Cash as it is about Johnny Cash and his wife.
Interesting.
In the sense of it's not really about him as a person as such. It is a lot of that as well, but I would say the main focus of this film is his relationship to his wife to be.
Right.
And it's very much establishing how they meet, the circumstances they meet, and then the circumstances that lead to them getting married. And Johnny Cash is a very unorthodox guy in that sense, and how he goes about it. But which is entertaining. But I think in my head, Johnny Cash is a bit more batshit than he was portrayed in this film. Like I know, obviously, like even if he is batshit, he's not batshit 24/7. So like, unless you're Ozzy Osbourne, but like he's not always doing that, right? Like he goes home and he has a beer and he kicks back or whatever. But in my I don't know, like I feel like in my head he is a bit of a fucking crazy guy. Was. But and I think it does the relationship between those two really well. But I think as someone who would want to know more about Johnny Cash, and considering you have the talent involved with Joaquin Phoenix
Oh
and
yeah,
Reese Witherspoon,
yeah.
their chemistry is really good. I like them together a lot, and I think they're kind of like will they won't they at the start's really well done,
Mm.
and they handle it really well. I feel like, but and it's not like ashamed to show the bad side of what Johnny's doing as well. It's
Okay.
not being because like
I
he's
like
married initially and they're on the road together and they're getting a bit frisky and she stops him or whatever and he's a bit like oh but and then he tries again. It's like no, you've got a wife and kid at home, like stop. And then eventually, but like years go by or whatever, and eventually he marries her. But I think that story only really works if you know that they go on to have a happy long marriage after that, which they don't show in the film because obviously like it would extend the runtime way over. But like unless you have the knowledge that those two are the two that end up together and they have a really long marriage, it would be a bit strange. Like if he got divorced and then married again, that story would kind of fall apart um, a bit. It would be more of like a character study, I guess, in like the fall of a marriage and the rise of fame. But
right.
I think that stuff was done well, and I really like some of the background stuff, especially when you watch like the Elvis film, and
Mm.
then you watch this. This is
Does
obviously
Elvis achieve a little bit more
well,
in their film?
Elvis is in this film in the same circumstance that he's in his own film at the very beginning.
All right. I see.
That's kind of what I was meaning. He's wearing the same suit. It's the same thing. And one thing they do really well is that they don't dwell on it too much. Like there's names thrown about, and there's people that, if you're familiar with that era of music, especially in like that area, like you'll get who people are. And they don't really dwell on it too much, and they don't explain. They don't go, "Oh, and here's the king, Elvis." Like they don't do that. He's just talking to a guy in the shadows, and you can kind of piece together that it's Elvis. Um, I like that stuff, and I like that it doesn't hold your hand in that sense. But I feel like I would have liked more Johnny Cash isms. Like there's a really good scene, like the Folsom Prison scene's really good, where you get his kind of like he's just like fuck you, man. I'm not listening to what you're telling me. Like I'm just gonna do what the fuck I want. Like that. I wanted a bit more of that, I guess. But yeah, and this is James Mangold in the 2000s, and I think when you look at a film like Elvis and you see the scale and scope of it, obviously the scale and scope of Elvis, I would say, is probably bigger than Johnny Cash, not in like popularity, but in like like in the way he portrays himself and the way he handles himself on stage. Johnny Cash is very like well, he's Johnny Cash, and Elvis is Elvis, and he's in his Las Vegas suite. Um, but yeah, I don't know when you go to a film that's kind of doing a lot of really interesting things, like even if you take out all those Elvis isms, it's doing very interesting things visually and like sound and like it's doing interesting cuts and interesting like montages and all that kind of stuff. And it's very like even if you're not really into Elvis too much, it's very interesting to watch. This film, I feel like maybe doesn't have that. It's very, I would say, basic in that sense. In a filmmaking standpoint, it's very like dry. I would say. I wouldn't say dry particularly in like a bad way, but it's if you're looking for like a cinematic experience, it's not that. It's very much character,
Mm.
which is fine. But I feel like once you've had Elvis, it's kind of hard to go back a bit to
Yeah.
this. And again, like I might just at the time. Obviously, I think this won quite a few Oscars as well, and it's well acted and it's well made. But I wouldn't say there's any character to the film itself. Really, it's very vanilla.
Got you.
So that's my thoughts on that.
All right. See, I've not seen it,
Uh,
but I am quite interested to
I would watch it,
scope it
but
out.
I would lower your expectations from Elvis.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Oh,
I
for
think
sure.
it's
Yeah.
a good enough film. But and it handles like substance abuse and stuff really well. I feel like with like he's just totally like self-destructive and all that, and how the people around him are perceiving that and stuff.
Yeah.
And his relationship with his dad's really well done as well. And I think his dad is the Terminator, the T. He's the Liquid Terminator from
T2.
Terminator 2. Yeah, I think
Ah.
that's it. On a totally opposite, not totally opposite, but kind of opposite points. This biopic is very different, and this biopic is probably closer to what Elvis is Ironically, this one doesn't have anything to do with music, so it's further away in that point. But in the way it's made, Bronson with Tom Hardy.
Ooh.
This film is very like theatrical in the same way that Elvis is, where there's a lot visually going on, and there's a lot of like there's a lot of like very like crude, but also like tongue in cheek and kind of cheeky humor, but also like a bit weird. And some of it, I feel like I feel because I watched Beetlejuice recently, and actually I didn't put it on my list, but I should probably talk about that too. Very quick Beetlejuice. Didn't like it too much. It was all right. Favorite bit of the film was only in it for like 4 minutes. I get it's a
Overrated
classic
question
in
mark?
America. It's a classic in America, but you probably had to grow up with it
Yeah.
for it to be a classic. I think it's, and this will come back to Bronson in a very hopefully satisfying way. Is that I feel like they're both very, not both, but Tim Burton can be a bit Shyamalan in the sense that he's weird for the sake of it, where sometimes he has like moments of like genuine quirkiness that work, and sometimes he has moments where you feel like he's went, what's a quirky thing I can do to make people think I'm quirky?
Right.
And I feel like Bronson suffers from that a little bit, but not nearly as much as Beetlejuice. Um, I think Beetlejuice is fine, but like I probably will never watch it again.
Didn't
Um,
one of our friends say that was his favorite film?
I don't think he said it was his favorite. Bowen recommended it to me.
Right.
I'd already been on my list, and I'd already actually started watching it, but it came off Amazon and then it came back on, so that's why I watched it.
I see.
But Michael Keaton's good in it, and actually Alec Baldwin doesn't even look like Alec Baldwin, but he's really good in it. But like, and I think the thing is as well that annoys me about that one is that I feel like it has a lot of potential, but a lot of the potential is just like wasted away, and it's kind of dumb. And then you get moments where I'm like, oh, this is actually interesting, and I would take much more of this. And then it's just like, oh shit, there's a stop motion snake, and it's just solved all the problems. Like, all right, bye. I appreciate stop motion, but that film's not great. I'll be honest. Anyway, back to Bronson. Bronson, I feel like has moments where it's quirky and works really, really well, and Tom Hardy completely carries that film on his extremely swole back. But there are moments as well where it also feels like, God damn, this feels like it's a bit weird for the sake of it. And I can't remember this precisely, but I feel like there are moments that Charles Manson, the real Charles Manson, fucking Charles Bronson. So he actually like he phoned Tom Hardy a few times, or vice versa, and they kind of have like a semi-friendly
Oh,
relationship
interesting. So
because of this
he's
film.
like he's alive. Like I don't know when this is set,
Yeah.
so I don't know the guy.
Um, I think it's set in the 90s,
All right.
but it was made in like the late 2000s.
Yeah.
But they actually like were talking on the phone and stuff like that. So there's like interviews with Tom Hardy talking about like, oh, he was like he's telling he's telling Charles Bronson about his like relationship problems, and Charles Bronson's like, oh, just leave it, mate, just leave it, and like stuff like that. So like, and the thing is, Charles Bronson's a funny, like he's a fucked up guy, but he's also funny, and they really get that across in the film as well, and like kind of in a bit of a Clockwork Orange way, just kind of the some of the horrors of our prison system at the same time.
Yeah.
But and also just that sometimes it just really doesn't fucking work, and sometimes they just have no clue what to do with these people. But there's really good sequences, and I feel like this film really kind of suffers towards the tail end because I feel like a lot of the stuff that really works at the start, that keeps you really invested and keeps the pace up, really starts to they do the same things towards the end of the film, and because you've already seen all of them, it kind of drags out things that probably should be more interesting than they are. Um, or are interesting without you having already seen the stuff before. Like there's a lot of him just fighting police officers, and I'm like, we have seen this like 4 or 5 times now, so like, can we just like, I get he does this a lot, but
Yeah.
like find a more interesting way to do this. But yeah, I and yeah, I feel like everyone in that film's really good as well, and it's very British in a good way. I like really British stuff, and I feel like it's very good in a British way. But yeah, I'm pretty fond of this film. I probably will give it a few years before I watch it again, but I would recommend Bronson quite a lot. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a very fun film, especially like I would say that the yeah, probably the end is a little draggy for me, but I think it's a really fun film. And it's just fucking batshit as well. It's just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, he gets a guy. I'm gonna spoil this scene, but it's amazing. He gets like a police officer in, and he's bringing him like library books. He's like, "Oh, I've got this book for you, Bronson," whatever, and he locks him in his room, and he's like, "Fucking bar me up," or whatever. He's got like lard or something, and he's like, "Fucking rub my ass," and he's like covering him in grease. And then all these police officers come in and they can't grab him because he's like covered in grease or some shit. And he's just butt naked. But like, it's just batshit. And Tom Hardy gets his cock out twice
There
and
you
stuff
go.
like that. I'm
Now I'm
waiting
sold.
for that. Yeah, everyone's sold. Yeah, you see Bane's little
Oh
TV.
no.
Um, but no, I like Bronson quite a lot. It's not like best film ever, but like I don't think it's trying. I don't think it's always trying to be. Sometimes it is, but it's a fun film and it does some interesting things. I feel like it's not a very conventional biopic, but Charles Bronson is not a very conventional man.
Yeah.
My last one, I will say very little about because I watched it a few weeks ago and I actually forgot until we started filming this. Is The Big Short, which again I feel like is really interestingly shot, and the script is quite quirky and funny, given the the circumstances is like really dire for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things is, have you seen The Big Short?
I'm just quickly looking at it because I don't know. I'm just.
And I will say, I think this is a comment about Oppenheimer as well. Is that film really handles like dark humor really well, where like you have very like off the cuff comments that make sense in context, but would be very like controversial nowadays and stuff.
Yeah.
And even more controversial at the time, but they're just kind of nonchalantly thrown about. But The Big Short is kind of it's a it's a weird comedy satire, but also serious telling of the 2008 housing crash in America that caused basically every world, like the world economy, to crash. Um, and they make a point of like, oh, there's a good point because this is a stacked cast as well. And I actually forgot Brad Pitt was in this film like a day after watching it, telling you about it. But just because everyone else is like has such a big presence in it, and he's kind of just like he's like a guru hacker. He's like the mentor that doesn't want anything to do with it anymore, but he's like, yeah. So like Christian Bale's in this film. He's not in it too much, but like he's basically the guy that susses out shit. The housing market's going to crash, and nobody believes him, and he just puts all his eggs in one basket anyway, and then gets absolutely torn to shit for it. But then makes the company like rich as fuck in the end. Um, and then Ryan Gosling's our narrator, but he's also a character who works for Steve Carell's higher up in Steve Carell's company, and they're kind of a little sector involved with his company, and then he goes to them to do the exact same thing that Christian Bale's character is doing. It's basically like 3 or 4 different groups going around, also realizing that this is going to happen and that there's nothing they can do to stop it because the whole system is so fucked and that it's completely self fucked. That it's not actually a problem with the system. It's just a problem. It's not a problem with anything people on the ground are doing like working people. It's a total problem with Wall Street and how it's built up and how things are organized and how financials are organized. And they're like, this is a total fucking jungle mess, and there is no hope in hell that this won't collapse. And then
Yeah.
basically the rest of the film is just them biding their time, waiting for it to collapse, but getting pressure because they're like, well, you said this was going to collapse in a big way and it hasn't done it yet, and then it just happens in one day, and everyone's like, what the fuck? And they're like, they're happy because they've got all this money, but now it's at the expense of the American public, and then further out to like the British and the world economy. So they handle that really well. I feel like where you're kind of like on board and it's a fun film, and then you're kind of hit with the Brad Pitt gets a really good moment where he's like, you do realize your win has just come at the cost of like all these people, and he has like some stat where he's like every percent that poverty goes up or whatever, 40,000 people die or kill themselves, something like that. So like there's a good balance between like the comedy and just how dumb this scenario is, but like how dumb it is on the part of the people who caused this problem, not the American public. And I feel like they handled that really well, considering like how badly this affected people. especially, and I feel like especially so soon after it happened as well, because I feel that you can get away with that where you can have your Jojo rabbits in the 2010s, right, or the 2020s. You can have your Jojo rabbit because 70 years since Hitler killed himself, and 70 years, and like basically everyone who experienced this is in any sort of adult way is kind of dead or won't see this film.
Mm.
Whereas people who lost their homes and all their savings and were taken advantage of by these like scummy financial folk are going to see this film like having experienced those things like less than 10 years ago. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like they handled that really well considering.
All right.
But that is the end of my little film diary.
Very good.
If
Well,
you say you have
productive
one
week.
more, Brandon?
Yeah, I've got a wee short one. So every now and then, Odeon over in the UK have this thing called Screen Unseen. Pretty much, it just you don't know what you're going in to see. It will list it if it's a horror film specifically, because obviously nobody wants to just be freaking surprised with that, or at least common people would rather not be surprised with that. They want to know beforehand. But yeah, essentially, you don't know what you're going in to see. They kind of give clues every couple of days or whatever. So I love to go to them because I like to just see something new. In the past, it's been pretty solid. It's been usually a good time. But this time it was a film called Scrapper, which is a film set in London, and it's honestly it's a bit of a weird film because there's not a lot of dialogue to begin with, and it's got this awkward vibe because the main character is this young 12-year-old girl, and she's kind of I don't want to spoil too much because I don't think it's going to be a big film. But essentially, she's living on her own and kind of trying to make money on her own, and it's a weird concept because you're watching this girl essentially live as an adult. And at the start of the film, I got the impression that this was going to be the norm for the film. I kind of thought the idea was going to be, oh, kids are adults in this world, but no, it's not. It's just that because her mum's dead. I'm like, okay, I see, here's me like fantasy book in this whole this whole movie. But no, it's pretty simple. But essentially, the father figure comes back into her life, and that's where the movie kind of starts. It's just a shame that the movie starts halfway through the film's runtime. So for the first hour, you're kind of sitting there like, what am I watching? Like, what is the plot of this film? Am I just watching this girl sort of, live her life? And they kind of go through the stages of grief and stuff. They make that a point. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of an awkward film. What I do like is the dynamic between the daughter and father, but again, it takes a little bit to kind of get to that point where they're bouncing off each other very well. But yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty average film. I think I liked it more than Haunted Mansion because at least it had some form of substance and stuff like that. Whereas Haunted Mansion was just mid. But yeah, I don't know. Like if you want to see it, go for it. I feel like it's definitely more for a British crowd. I can't imagine it being in the US.
Well, when I was in London today, I was checking the itinerary for the rest of like the BFI cinemas,
Mm.
and they were playing it all week, I think. So
All
it
right.
seems like I think it's probably bigger in film snob circles, maybe.
Probably. It's getting decent reviews with critics and stuff, but I feel like that's where it's going to end. I can't imagine
A
casual
popular audience.
viewers
Yeah.
because more than half of my screen left when
Yeah.
the film, not when it started, but it took a while because I feel like people were just waiting for something to happen, and
Right.
understandably nothing happened, and they're just like, right, what my way. Honestly, I kind of felt like leaving because it was getting late, and I'm like, is it worth missing my bus? Like, but luckily I stayed. Luckily I stayed, and I had a decent time by the end of it. It was a nice little. It's a nice little film about the relationship between a daughter and father who don't know how to be either, kind of thing. Because he's not been their dad, even though he is one. She's kind of now taken up the role of being the mother because
So
you know.
Is it just kind of a slice of life film?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a perfect way of describing it. The comedy is very touch and go. It could be
Right.
funny sometimes, but it also could be dry. Where you're like, was that supposed to be funny? Just like. But yeah, I think if it sounds like your type of thing, go for it. But for the most part, I don't think it's going to really interest many people. I can't
So
imagine it
slice of
making
life
very well.
films tend to just do better in kind of film snob circles anyway. But
Exactly, it's definitely more of a film like in your
don't.
film festivals and stuff.
I'll,
It's
I'll tell
definitely
you,
that.
don't take a date to a slice of life film. It's not interesting.
There you
It
go.
doesn't make you look
Go
interesting,
see
and
Gran
it's not interesting.
Turismo.
See Gran Turismo with your date. Yeah, I learned that the hard way. Fucking Minari, man. Minari's a good film, but it's very slice of life. Like absolutely nothing happens in that film, and that was a dire date,
Oh
and that was
man,
my fault. I picked that film,
man.
but yeah.
Jeez,
Have you seen Minari?
Minority, not Minority Report, no.
No, it's like Minari.
Oh right, no, I've not even
Minari.
heard of it.
It's Stephen Yoon.
All
Stephen
right.
Yoon. He's really good in it, actually. It's literally just a family moves from Korea to America, and it's just them trying to like make it in America,
Yeah,
which is I would like that film watching it at home alone, but yeah,
slice of
not enough
life's
time.
hard because it's like you really need to be invested in the characters if
Or
you're gonna
you
watch.
need to completely understand that that's what you're getting yourself in for,
Yeah, which I guess for screen unseen, it's a bit of a hard
which is
ask
yeah,
for people,
yeah.
But anyway, to the main event, I suppose.
Well, I did have a little idea
Oh,
there. I was like, maybe we should have a series where we get into snobby films and we're like the road to snobbery, and we show us now
all right, I
where we
see.
start off our podcast
So,
and we're like, total, our favorite films are Interstellar
so,
and Ratatouille.
so last week it was Amelie, and this is Scrapper this week, I see. So
Scrubber,
we're
yeah.
already on, we're already
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
road.
And as we go on, we'll get more and more snobby, and we'll
There
start
you
talking
go.
about French films, and then we'll start losing our audience because no one gives a crap unless you're already into the. Nah, I'm joking.
There you
I
go.
bet they're really good, but it's an idea. But yes, the main event, just to completely go back on film snobs, uh, basically one of the most popular films ever made. Rightly so, iconic,
100%.
beautifully made, and holds up better than most modern films, to be honest.
It's actually shocking.
Like, yeah, it's like when you've watched this, it's a bit like Red Dead for me, where it's like, man, that game is like, or like Assassin's Creed Unity I played recently, where I'm like, that game is over 10 years old, or well, that game's about 10 years old. You could release this today, and it would still be like very good looking game.
Yeah, it's still hold up.
But you could go back to like, I don't know, you could go back to a more recent game than Assassin's Creed Unity and be like, man, this game looks like shit. Like, I'll think of an example, but yeah, like even looking at films from a few years ago, you can go, man, that looks like shit compared to the CG we have today.
Yeah.
But 1993, that is
Oh,
a fucking gorgeous film,
it's mad, eh?
beautiful.
It's mad. It's
And we're big into our Spielberg and our George Lucases,
we
and this
are,
is just
and this is prime
this is like yeah,
era for that sort of type of film. Like these are the type of films you grew up on. And it was definitely mine. Like for me growing up, it was Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Jurassic Park. Like those were my three
yeah.
films.
What was the
Um,
middle one?
Indiana Jones.
Oh right, okay.
Um, those were my three franchises growing up. Then the sort of Batman and Spider Man came in after, which
Yeah,
I know might be weird for some. I feel like some people do grow up in Batman and Spider Man first, but no, mine's with Star Wars, Jurassic Park, and Indiana Jones. But yeah, man. So this film specifically, I'm not gonna honestly not speaking of the other ones yet anyway, but this film specifically just sticks out of my childhood so much. Um, in this film, like when I was a kid at like 6 to maybe 12 years old, I wanted to do archaeology. I know it's well, I called it archaeology. It's actually
paleontology.
paleontology, but I called it archaeology at the time,
Yeah, mate.
confusing everyone.
Same. Obviously, this will be a big reason, but like, it's not the sole reason. But
Yeah,
had I not done the degree that I'm doing, probably the next thing would have been paleontology
it's
slash
yeah,
archaeology, and that would strongly have been influenced by this.
hundred
And
percent.
also, not to interrupt, but a lot of paleontology, like a lot of, they had a basically an influx after this film,
I bet.
and a lot of paleontology research and like an influx of people is like due to this film, and they're aware of that, and they're like, for the ones I've seen, they're pretty thankful for it. Like no one's like, oh, these fucking kids coming in just because they see Jurassic. Like they're pretty like, yeah, man. Like I wanted funding for this for years, and now like Jurassic Park's around, and I got it. But yeah, it's even just seeing the trailer today in Oppenheimer on the IMAX screen, I was like, holy fuck, I want to see
Yeah,
this film on IMAX. Like holy shit.
it's crazy. It's crazy. Like I know the special effects and practical effects are clearly the standard, but honestly, I think it's one of those films that kind of just everything makes it. So like the cast, the simple story, the location, like just everything, the sound design, as you want to, as you say, like oh mate, the sounds of the dinosaurs in this film are just freaking class, man. Like I can hear the raptors'
They're
noise in
so
my brain.
iconic that you can hear the same sounds in other films, and it
Yeah,
really threw you off
yeah,
because you're like, that's just a Jurassic Park T
yes.
Rex.
That
Looking at you, Avatar.
that's what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, with the black cat looking thing. Yeah, yeah, that had made the T Rex sound. I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, man, just pure iconic. Like we're talking about it for like Back to the Future. Like that is just an iconic film that's always going to be a part of cinema. You know that people are going to look back on fondly, and I just can't imagine this film being sort of lost in time.
yeah.
You know?
And this is kind of a culmination and like an integration of new technologies and
Yeah.
perfecting old ones, right?
And it's
Because you have
and how does it hold up better than films currently? It doesn't make no sense.
even
how do you
with the same
jumpstart
directors.
something
Yeah,
with the same directors? Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Like,
insane.
mate, BFG doesn't look as good as this fucking. I'm joking. That's my joke. But like, BFG is not as good looking film as this. But
Like
yeah, because you've got
obviously, like CGI might look better because like I'm not going to be blind to it, right? The CGI does look a bit shady sometimes in this film, especially when they're in the light. So I don't know what you're called the dinosaurs, but the ones that look like ostriches when they're running through the fields, they look a bit crap. Like you can tell it's not it doesn't look great. Whereas maybe compared to Jurassic Park, Lost Kingdom, or something, the CG probably looks a
Calamimus.
little bit better. Calamimus, that's
That's
it.
what. Yeah.
You know, so I'm not gonna be blind to say like, oh, this whole film is better than everything modernly because it's just that's just not true. But there are certain scenes, especially the T Rex scene that we all know about, that's freaking
Flawless.
perfection. Like when it first shows up in the rain and the
Yeah.
roar and its eyes dilate. Oh my god, bro! Like it's
God.
just that's so much effort, man.
Well, not only did they have a perfect reference, a life-size reference to make the CG model from,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also playing to CG strength. And I feel like this is something that John Favreau understands, or at least understood in
100%.
Iron Man,
Yes.
and that basically everyone else has forgotten, something like after the fact, because CG works really well when you have shiny, wet, dark surfaces.
Mm.
Like to generalize the whole medium,
Yep.
that's its strength, right? Not like broad daylight, because like a lot of stuff nowadays, like I like the Tintin film, but a lot of the stuff feels like Tintin, like I'm watching Tintin, right?
Yeah.
But like you go back to this, and it's exactly like they know what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and they know where the strengths lie and where the weaknesses lie. And like you say, the Gallimimus, I'd probably agree, they're probably the weakest part of the
Yeah,
CG parts of the film.
I think so.
But they're playing to their strengths. You know, the Velociraptors are in a dark kitchen,
Yep.
and when they're CG, they're in the darkness,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And when they're not, they're puppets, and it's like it blends them so
Well,
well.
that's the thing. Like they cut them really well, where it's like, okay, it's the puppet here, and now it's the. I think there's, at some point there are people in suits. I don't know if that's came into the full film or if that was cut. I can't remember. There's definitely a version of them when they're men in suits.
Velociraptors.
Yeah, I saw
I
some
couldn't
behind the
tell you.
scenes stuff. I'm not sure though. It might have just been they might just went for puppets. Um, but yeah, like how like what I was saying, like you can the way they cut it, they use it perfectly. Like the close ups obviously use the puppet. You can have more details. You don't need to. You know what I mean? It's the same with the T Rex. I think my favorite shot is when the eye dilates in the car. That's just so sick.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
and like you see the trouble they go to make that, like just make it for one, but
yeah.
also put it in the rain because
Mm.
like there's obviously, I mean, it's not like new news, but like there's a documentary where or the behind the scenes where you see them like smacking it with towels to try and keep it dry
Yeah,
because it's like
yeah,
shivering in the rain.
yeah.
And it's like you've got all these like problems you have to solve about like actually building a life-size fucking
Hmm.
T-Rex.
And they were gonna do stop motion, but it looked too janky for the modern
Yeah.
sort of. film at that time.
I think the thing was is that had it been stop motion, it probably would have been the best stop motion we'd ever seen at the time.
Yeah,
As
probably.
well, that
Yeah,
was the thing. It was going to be Phil Tippett, and he'd already worked on all the Star Wars
yeah,
films, and that was kind of his bread and butter. And he'd come on, and he'd probably done he's probably done like all the best. Whenever you see some good stop motion in
yeah,
the 80s and 90s, it's usually Phil Tippett,
probably.
or his team of people. Um, and yeah, it was kind of he'd originally been called on to do that, and then he'd kind of been, as they say, extinct by the CG team coming in, and they were like,
Yeah.
"Oh shit, we can actually make this look really
It
great."
was
But
ILM. It must have been, right?
yes,
Yeah.
but they had a great compromise sort of thing. Well, not a compromise, but a kind of like integration of both techniques, where you had the expertise of a puppeteer, where they had these little like dino puppets, and so Phil Tippett would make like a stop motion, and then I guess they would smooth it and kind of tweak it in the same kind of way you would have a motion capture, and then you would go back and tweak it to
Right.
kind of rectify any problems or kind of get more out of what you had. It's kind of used as a basis, and I guess that's what they did with this. Is they used Phil Tippett's puppeteering as a basis to then kind of upload to the CG elements. So it's not like purely handcrafted CG, but it's done in a really cool way where
Yeah.
it's like it's an integration. You're taking the best of both techniques and being able to
Hmm.
integrate them. And I don't know of any. Obviously, I haven't done research into this like deep, but that's the only film I've ever heard that done, where you have like a stop motion beginning and then a CG touching up
It might
of a.
just be because that's just what the plan was, though, is it was supposed to be stop
Yeah, it could be.
motion,
It could just be this unnecessary
And
now.
then
It's
and then
supposed to
from
be.
then on they're like, well, we don't need to do that part. Like that wasn't
And maybe that's
intentional.
the problem. Maybe that's why this film looks so fucking
Maybe that's a
good. Yeah,
problem. Yeah.
but
It's insane. You were talking about Oppenheimer and how that scene might be your favorite, like one of your favorite scenes of all time. That T Rex scene might be mine. It's just like, just like every aspect of it, like the water, how it ripples, and they set that up a bit earlier in the film where Jeff Goldblum's character talks about it. It's just like, no, it's a freaking smart film, man. It's a smart film, and it took me a long time to realize it was based off a book as well. I had no idea until
Michael Crichton.
fairly
Yeah.
recently. Um, I know it. I'm sure. I'm certain it's very different, but
The other thing is well, I was just going to say that. Yeah,
yeah.
the Steven Spielberg had bought the rights to the book before the book was published,
Uh,
and so I think he had read the book, but then changed things from the book, and the book was published as the author had written it, but Spielberg had kind of went off in his own direction a bit and used the book as kind of a basis,
yeah.
especially because you get kind of a lot of people in the book are very unlikable,
Hmm.
and that goes for the
Like
message of the
Hammond's
book.
character, like he's meant to be like a
Hammond's the
really
most
bad
obvious
guy.
one,
Yeah.
yeah. There are like kind of everyone's a bit. It's a bit like so like Steven Spielberg had done this for Jaws as well. But Jaws was based on a book where basically all the characters were unlikable, and I think there's a comment of Steven Spielberg being like, "I actually wanted the shark to win in the end because everyone was just fucking horrible." So he kind of made them more likable. He kind of did a bit of a Disney where like you take a fairy tale and you kind of not sterilize it, but you kind of touch it up a bit, and you make them a bit more like you're rooting for the good guys. And I feel like that's what Spielberg did for Jaws, and I feel like it's kind of what he did for Jurassic Park as well, as he kind of
Yeah.
Disneyified it a little bit
Yeah.
in the sense of he took out all the rough edges of the characters, which work in the book probably.
Hmm.
I have read the book a good while ago now,
All right.
but I don't even know if I still have it, but I definitely read it, and I had the Lost World as well, but I never got around to reading that. But I think he kind of does that where he kind of like grandpaifies John Hammond.
Yeah, makes them more like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, well,
And I
literally
think,
grandpaifies him because he has
oh
grandkids in
yeah,
the film.
and I
But
think
yeah,
casting Richard Attenborough was a really great
unbelievable
choice
choice.
as
Yeah,
well because he's just likable dude. He's literally Santa Claus in one of those
yeah.
films, so it's like
Miracle on
you trust
34th
him.
Street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But obviously, as the kind of film goes on, you're like, what are you doing? Like,
He sounds
you
like
do
just a
not understand what toys you're playing with, mate. Like, you're
yeah,
you're
and that's
changing
the thing.
the course of life.
I think in the book he's more of a kind of puts forward a positive image, but he's a more malevolent,
Yeah,
he more corporate thing himself.
I'm pretty sure he dies in the book, right?
He gets eaten by compies, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the film, he's very much it's like greed, right? He's more of a victim of greed rather than like malicious force,
Yeah.
where it's like spared no expense, and like you can see they've clearly spared expenses, but he's putting forward this like narrative of, oh, we've got the best technology and the best this, but you've hired like Dennis Nedry and you don't pay him enough, like, there's that kind of side of it,
Yeah.
and you've only got three tech guys. Like, I know the park's not open yet, but
Yeah.
three tech guys.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
and like
I love how these have all the merch ready and stuff like that, like merchandise.
yeah, yeah,
It's so
exactly.
good, man.
And
It's
it,
so
even the merch is iconic. Yeah,
it's
like you go
great.
to Comic Con and well, I went to Comic Con when I was younger, and like they have like prop replicas of just shit in the background that never actually is really on screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a good example is the park maps.
Mm,
Like you literally see them for like a couple scenes where Tim's like wiping them off from the case of the night vision goggles,
yeah.
and that's basically their extent in the film.
Yep.
But people have been like printing their own versions and shit. Yeah,
So
but
cool. So
But yeah,
cool.
that's what I mean. The whole aesthetics like on point as well.
Mm,
Like it's really iconic, not just in the sense of the dinosaurs are iconic and the way like the things that are homaged later in other films.
like
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 I'm thinking like
like the
Toy Story 2.
cars or
Yeah,
the big gate, opening gate, you know.
yeah.
So there's so
But
many.
not only do you have those big elements that are iconic, but there's also like very small, minute details that are like well thought out, well designed, that kind of thing. Where you like actually believe like in bumfuck nowhere, 250 miles off the coast of Costa Rica, there's like a dinosaur island, and you can
Yeah,
completely believe that.
yeah.
Like it's really really well done.
It really is. It really is. The characters like Sam Neill, Laura Dern's characters, I think honestly, you if it obviously if all great films need um like we were saying with Oppenheimer, they need a great cast, they need music, they need the director and stuff. I think this film's the exact same. It wouldn't work as well if it wasn't for Alan Grant or Ellie in these films because they do really do, especially to me anyway. Like Sam Neill's Alan Grant was one of my
Yeah,
favorite
Sam Neill
characters
has
growing
been in
up.
other very good films,
Mm-hmm.
but he is always going to be Alan Grant,
100%.
right?
I could only see him as that. Um, but it's surely it's his biggest film, right? Like I mean, it's one of the biggest films of all time. I can't imagine
Yeah,
him being in it.
he's also known for like Event Horizon stuff like that,
Right.
but and he was in Hunt for the Wilder People as well.
Mm,
That's more a modern one, but like he's in other things, and people know him from other things. But I feel like
yeah,
he's in those things because he was in Jurassic Park as well.
exactly. And I like his little character arc in this film as well because like it's pretty simple as well. You know, it's like he doesn't like kids. He finds them annoying and stuff, and then he grows to have to he grows
But it
into
doesn't matter because he'll never have kids because in the sequels he doesn't marry
yeah.
Lerner. And
You'd think that'd be the you'd think
yeah,
that's the obvious story
I
beating.
will say as well, I kind of props to like not forcing like uncomfortable like romance scenes as
Well, yeah,
well.
they didn't really do that in this film at all, really.
Yeah, it's very like yeah. I was gonna say they're not. It's not a film where you're going, are they, aren't, will they, won't they? It's a film where you're like, are they?
Yeah, you're like, do I sense some?
But you're
Is
like,
there a
are they
relationship
already
here?
together? Are we
Yeah,
just not like seeing it? Are they already together?
yeah.
That's kind of the vibe I get, where I'm like, I just assumed they were together. Like,
Yeah, so that growing up, 100%. I just assumed, and if Jurassic Park 3 comes, and I'm like, what? What happened? I'm confused. But yeah, I actually quite like that about them, though. How it's quite ambiguous if they're
yeah,
together or not. Because
I,
at the
I,
end of the day, you don't need to. It's not that type of film. You know what I mean? It's not about.
it could quite easily be that type of
Well,
film, but
yeah,
it would
because
probably work
they
more better.
clearly go into the sort of like in the third act, like oh, the mother, father, daughter, and son sort of dynamic. You know,
Yeah,
when they're with the kids and stuff. Um, but yeah, I think even the kids really do really well in this film actually, especially acting against pretty much either nothing or puppets. Like that's pretty good. Like um,
I will say as well, I like the ensemble cast. Like, there's everyone in this film is iconic themselves.
Sam
Like
Jack,
Samuel Jackson is iconic. Dennis Nedry's iconic.
Dennis,
The
man,
what's his? I can't remember his name, but the hunter guy.
his name's Bob
I
Peck,
can't remember.
but
I can't
I've not
remember.
seen him anywhere else.
But like it's all iconic, and I love one thing I love about it is that, and you have like Doctor Wu and stuff as well.
Yep, yep.
But I like that you have kind of, as things go wrong, you kind of have like disjointed stories, but you have them kind of trying to interconnect as well. Where one of my favorite scenes is when he goes to the hunter guy and he's like, "I want you to go get my grandkids,"
Mm.
sort of thing, and he doesn't specify. Um, but I like the bit where he's like, "I want you to take this gun. I want you to go get my grandkids," and he's not like, "I want you to go save everyone on the island," and "I want you to go get Sam Neill." He's just like, "I want you to go make my grandkids,"
Yeah.
and I love that. And then you have like him. He just has no fucking patience for Jeff Goldblum. How have we like more than 10 minutes into this interview, this review, and we haven't mentioned Jeff
I
Goldblum?
know, he's iconic, man. He's
He's mental,
iconic.
but yeah, they're all so good, and they're all so iconic as
That's what I
well.
mean. Like all the characters, and again, like I couldn't name them all. I could name the main ones, but like the lawyer character, I couldn't name him. He's one of the best.
Dodson, Dodson, we got Dodson here. That's the only reason I can name him.
But it's like his iconic shot is obviously the toilet. You know what I mean? Like I always remember that as a
Oh, the
kid.
lawyer. Oh
The
yeah,
lawyer,
yeah. No,
yeah,
I was thinking of the rival company guy.
yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Who's
yeah.
the secret main bad guy in Dominion?
Fuck
It's the
off.
same character, yeah.
Fuck off. No, I know it's just dumb.
Stupid.
But
Stupid.
oh yeah, the lawyer as well. Oh, I kind of like the lawyer though. I love that line when they're having dinner. And he's like, "I brought you all here to support me, and the only one sticking up for me is the blood sucking lawyer." And you just see his face, and he's like, "Thanks, John." I'm like, "You fucking this guy." It's so good, but it's a really like tight script. It's really funny as
It's
well.
good.
Like, it's on point. Like,
It's for sure. And
and
it,
it just makes you wonder. You're like, how the fuck can this guy just keep doing this like one film after that? Like I get he has his duds,
yeah,
especially in his old age, he's getting his duds. But man, this guy like most people only get like one or two good
yeah.
films in them,
This
right?
guy did Indiana
Yeah.
Jones,
And this
E.T.,
guy's
you
like
know?
getting all like yeah. Like most people have like one Jurassic Park in their lifetime if they're like a genius,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he's got them like one after the other. Because that's the thing he made. So like the 80s was like three Indiana Jones films, E.T.
You had Jaws
Um,
as well.
well, he had Jaws in the 70s.
Yeah.
He had The Color Purple and
Schindler's List.
Empire of the Sun in the 80s, I think, as well. Then he had Schindler's List the same year as Jurassic Park.
Mad.
Like, what the fuck, bro? Like, leave some for someone else. Like, god damn.
Crazy.
But yeah, he's unreal.
The thing
And the
is,
thing is,
though, what Spielberg does well is that he has a good team around him, though. It's not just him. Like, we just mentioned, like, Phil Tippett or whatever. Mate, I can't believe you haven't mentioned John Williams. Oh my god. Freaking possibly the best theme in any film, honestly. Like, this instantly iconic, man. I just, I don't feel the same way with films these days. I haven't, like, when's the last theme you were like, I mean, I mean, you can say Oppenheimer. Like, when's the last theme when you were like, oh,
Oppenheimer's a
that
good
is
score in a different way
iconic,
from Jurassic Park, though. Yeah.
like instantly memorable? I
Well,
really
I
can't
think,
think of one.
I don't know. I think even though iconic kind of means that, I think there is something more to iconic than just memorable as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like I could know Oppenheimer or I could know like Interstellar,
Hmm.
but they're very very good
Yeah.
and arguably better in some ways, but they're not Jurassic Park, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. But that, again, that's what John Williams kind of has in relation with Spielberg, is that they just have banger after banger, like just instant classics. It's like, how does he do that? You know what I mean? It's just insane. Like that, oh, it freaking makes me emotional just thinking about that song, because it's just so well done. Especially the way it's used in the film as well. Because they could, what I hate about in the sequels is that they overuse it every time they show a dinosaur. Do do do. It's like, nah, man, like chill. Like, you don't need to do it every time. you know, like, like save it for the special moments. For example, the is it the Brachiosaurus when they first see it, the dinosaur? Perfect, perfect time to use it. That's the first time you hear the theme, I believe, and it's, again, that's probably one of the best scenes as well, just for the spectacle. Because again, for people watching, that's the first time they've seen freaking dinosaur. Well, probably in CG, right? Yeah, good dinosaur CG. Yeah, yeah. Speaking of like iconic, there's so many iconic we're talking about this for like Revenge of the Sith the other day. It's just an instant highlight reel. It's just iconic moment after iconic moment. You know,
that was my point actually. I forgot
there you go.
was that it's. Oh, I was going to compare it to Raiders rather than
Mm.
Revenge of the Sith. But I was
Oh
going to
no,
say
that's good.
Raiders is
Yeah.
literally one action sequence to the next, and every single one
Mm-hmm.
is iconic and memorable. And this is like exactly not probably not action scene to action scene, but in the same way
There's
that
moments.
even just dialogue in a
Yeah.
room is iconic.
Yeah.
like
It's like
like the bit.
we all remember the Triceratops poo pile. We all remember the T Rex breaking out of its
Mate,
cage. We all remember
I used
the dangling car. You
I
know.
used to rewind that big pile of shit that when I was a
No,
kid
that's
so
one
much
big pile.
and laugh my ass off. That was the funniest shit to 6-year-old me ever.
Again,
Yeah.
mate, that Triceratops looks so good though, and that's real. That's a real practical, bloody animatronic. It's so well done, man.
I'm sure it tours. I'm sure they have it on loan occasionally. Like they give it around to like
Really,
different. I can't remember what it was. If it's like cinemas or I think they give it to like Universal Studios. I might have seen it even
damn.
because they used to have like a lot of displays in like the Jurassic Park section of the Universal Park.
Yeah.
And one of the good things about the Universal Park is that Steven Spielberg actually had some input, like quite a lot of input on the Jurassic Park ride and stuff like that.
Mm,
So like even the ride is completely like the old version of the ride is very cohesive with the film as
gotcha.
well and stuff like that. So that's really I really like that as well. But
It's just smart filmmaking because like you're touching it, so it just makes sense to make it practical. But today, that just doesn't seem to correlate. They're like, oh no, doesn't matter.
make him touch a green beanbag and
Yeah,
we'll make it a dinosaur later. Yeah.
exactly.
Spielberg's like, no, build a fucking
Like,
Ceratops.
obviously, it's not like it's an easy task to make a freaking good looking practical dinosaur, but they've done it. So, so like, do it
And they did it
again.
in the 90s.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And that was cutting edge. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And you're supposed like in not to like jump to like Jurassic World or whatever, but then they have like that scene with the dying dinosaurs, and it's the only practical dinosaur. And it's like, oh, it looks great in that, Billy. They did that freaking 20 years ago. You
Yeah.
know what I
But
mean?
that's also their marketing thing as well. They're like, oh, we did a practical dinosaur.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it's 3 seconds, man, and it dies. Like fair enough, like kudos, like fair enough. But like,
Yeah.
and the thing is, I think Jurassic World looks good in a very different. I wouldn't say it looks good, but it looks good at times
Hmm.
in a very different way from this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I feel like just to jump to Jurassic World at the end quickly,
Hmm.
the bit with the Indominus and T Rex where they're fighting,
Yeah.
and then you have like the light spraying over, like
Mm.
stuff like that looks good in CG,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's not it's not believable in the same way that these films are.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a big part of why the Jurassic World films did well, but nobody really gives a fuck.
The thing is, it's like they were always going to do well. It's got the Jurassic Park name on it. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
this is the thing, again, with the ride as well. Like, you go to the parks now, and it's like 30 odd years later. And, well, yeah, it's about 30 years later. And, well, it's exactly 30 years later, because that's why we're doing the video, right?
hmm
Like, it's like 30 years later, and people are still queuing for the OG Jurassic Park ride.
yeah.
That Jaws ride has been and gone. Back to the Future has been and gone. I missed it. Rip.
Oh,
Like, all these properties have been and gone, but like Jurassic Park is still like a big hitter with a long wait,
yeah.
and that says something even just in the absence of the film, right?
Exactly.
Like people love this fucking film, and
It's
the thing is, you can like we've talked about film snobs, right? And
hmm
there is a bit of anti-Spielbergism sometimes. I feel like
yeah.
among established filmmakers. And I say to those people, go fuck yourself, because like Spielberg's fucking good, bro.
There's a
Like
reason why people
there's a
call him the
reason, yeah.
goat. You know
Just
what I
because
mean?
he's popular doesn't mean you can't like him, right?
Exactly.
Jurassic Park is Jurassic Park. You watch Jurassic Park and you tell me what's fucking wrong with it, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what the fuck is wrong with that film.
Is there anything you can think of besides like some stodgy CGI moments? Like, is there any like
Um,
story beats where you're like,
I
oh, I
mean,
don't like that? Where
uh,
because I am struggling. There's no point where I'm like, oh, I hate that part. You know?
I know obviously, I know a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm like, I know like quote unquote bloopers or like cinema mistakes,
Mm.
stuff like that. But like, those are nitpicks. Like, you're not gonna put a film out
Yeah,
of
that's the thing.
it. But
I mean, even the intro
actual
scene
criticism,
where it's like shoot, that's great, man.
you
Again,
yeah.
iconic. Just Every scene.
Yeah, even just him, like I really like Alan just fucking with kids at the start as well,
Yeah.
where he's like, he'll slice you here or maybe here, like stuff like that. I'm like, mate, come on. Um,
Oh man.
there's a line he has about kids where like they're walking up the hill towards the camera, and she's like, "You don't want one of those?" And he's like, "They're just small and smelly, and I hate them," or stuff like that. It's funny, but
They'd open the car door, the freaking caravan door, and this is John Hammond money.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like even the talking scenes are iconic, right? Because he pops the thing and he goes, "Save, we were saving that," and he goes, "For today," stuff like that. You know, it's like really, really like good, like
It's
off the
so
cuff stuff.
good. It's such a
And
good script.
and like Laura Dern walks in, she's like, "Who's the jerk?" And like, yeah, it's great. But like my example earlier was like the bit where they're talking about the ride break, like the Disney rides breaking down or whatever, and this was in the trailer earlier.
Mm.
But it's Jeff Goldblum is just lying on the table, and that's become like a meme in itself.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like that seems iconic as well. Not just because it's a meme, but it's also iconic. Like
The thing is, you can't write that though. Like, oh, this is gonna be an iconic part. You know what I mean? It's so
yeah,
natural the way it happened. All
and
it's
like the
all of it.
DNA animation,
Yep.
like
Yep.
what do you want? Like if you say like what's his freaking name? Is
Who?
it just like they're like the actual DNA thing has a name, right?
Oh shoot. Oh god. Can't remember.
Um,
Can't remember.
fuck, mate, I'm actually so annoyed I don't remember this.
That's the
That
thing.
that is. Oh mate, we just give up the podcast now. This is
Yeah,
we're not
that's
film.
it.
We're not
Mate.
film material.
Fake that.
But just that whole anime, like the whole. That's what I mean. Like the whole '90s vibe of it is like really on point as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like,
Which Mr. TNA, is that what it is?
yeah, just like Mr. DNA or whatever.
That's what they call it here
Um,
anyway.
but like they've never. I think because it's quite a. That's what I mean. It's kind of a little bit weird, the film as well, right? A little bit quirky, where you get like the animation and like the animation's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
Like it's obviously exposition, but you've got his little spiel as well, where he's like, "Hello, John. Hello, John. Hello, John." And if you just like you can just because they go talking over it, but like if you just focus on the thing, it just keeps going. And there's stuff like that where there's
Yeah,
like a lot of like layered
yeah.
stuff like that, where there's still stuff going on in the background, even though the focus is now on a new character,
Exactly.
and you could just hear them still going, "Hello, John. Hello, John." Like it's just really good. But no, yeah, and like Richard Attenborough, he's like a genius in his own like
Yeah.
directing and acting and stuff. But he's on point. Sam Jackson's on point. He's obviously, I think, probably one of my criticisms of the film is Sam Jackson is just like underused.
Oh, sometimes I forget he's in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do like his little spiel where he has a cigarette in his mouth though.
Yeah. I just love
I
his
do like that.
relationship with Buddy. What's his
Nedry.
faces? Yeah, that's great. Man.
Um, he does cameos. If any of you guys are fucking rich and want to speak to
Um,
Dennis Nedry, he does cameos. Big Al.
Big
But
Al.
like, bro, the can as well, the can itself, like
Yeah.
Barbasol, yeah, it's mental.
I actually really
But
like how they explain the sort of science behind it, though. Like, obviously, like it's fictional, but like I can buy
it's
it.
very
You know what I mean?
believable.
You can believe it. You know, like
Yeah.
100%. Especially for kids as well. Like I think it's easy enough for kids to understand as well. Um, in fact, what was this film rated? Is it PG? Surely not. PG-13, right? So 12 over in the UK. Thought so. I was gonna say like surely it's for
It
PG.
could be a film that was re-rated because our country is, as the boomers would say, is going to hell because kids aren't exposed to real media anymore.
Damn.
Um, because I know Back to the Future was rated for PG and then bumped up to a 12.
Interesting.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was kind of the same idea.
Let's see. I don't
But
know. There are some.
yeah, I reckon it
Bit.
was actually because I've got one here that says PG and
All
then one
right.
that says 12. So I reckon it's maybe been rated up to a 12, but originally was PG.
Damn.
So if you're not 12 kids, well, you probably can't appreciate this film anyway, but you'll fucking love it.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, I think you're right as well at the same time. You don't get films like this anymore.
No. No. You're
Um,
gonna hear that a lot from this podcast as well. Like we'll talk about
yeah,
our favorite films, like Back to the Future, Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones. Like they just don't. There's just a different vibe to them. Um, yeah,
At
like
least what's popular.
yeah, like honestly, like in recent terms for me, it's probably Avatar that comes close. Just where it just feels like it's its own new thing, and it
Right.
feels iconic
Yep.
already. You know, and I know some people might hate that because I know we have some Avatar haters. I'm not one of them, but yeah, man, yeah,
To be fair, I understand the Avatar hate less and less the older I get.
mm, right. I think it's just more just that people think. I get that. I get for the first one. I get why people think, why is that the most
I
popular
I
film? You know?
understand, but I also think there's a big bandwagon that people love jumping on of like, oh, he made this really expensive film and it's just mediocre.
Yeah,
It's like it does it well.
yeah,
Like,
hmm
like just because it's not like the point of the film is not to have a brand new groundbreaking story, it's to have breaking visuals, right?
yeah,
That's the point.
yeah.
But at the same time, it could have like a groundbreaking story at the same time,
But people
which
forget the world building as well, though. Like,
yeah.
you
The
know?
other thing is people are just fucking dumb, right? Like I'm not saying if you're dumb if you hate Avatar, but like there's a lot of people who have not seen Avatar in 10 years but will call it shit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like really go back and refresh your memory and be like, okay, fair enough. Because like I'm saying that because I've been guilty of it in the past as well.
We all have.
Like
We all have.
18, 19-year-old me was like, yeah, Avatar is shit. And then I watched it again in the cinema for like the new Avatar coming out. And I was like, you know what? That's a solid film.
Yeah.
Like
And we
it's
all love the
actually
second one. Oh,
so. Oh yeah, and the second one was
yeah,
banging.
yeah,
Yeah, but like you know what I mean. Like there is a lot of bandwagons going about.
100%.
Just keep your eyes peeled because
Mm-hmm.
they're not usually true. They're not. I was gonna say they're not always true. They're not even usually true.
Yeah.
Like the big one at the moment, I get it's a meme, but like the Oppenheimer one where it's like, oh, you built a bomb and you're sad because people used it, and it's like that's a much more nuanced point than you think it is. Like, like I know you're making fun of that, and like me saying that's probably part of the joke
But,
because
the,
I'm like, you're not getting the joke.
but those are the
But
same
like,
people like hyping up Barbie, so.
but surely you've seen the film Oppenheimer. If you haven't like at least got some nuance out of that film,
Yeah,
you're the problem, right? Go
yeah.
home and do some fucking homework, bro.
But what I love it, like,
Learn
again,
about the war.
but like getting back to Jurassic Park as well, like, it doesn't, I don't think it really targets anything politically. Obviously, there's moral issues, but I can't think of anything like a sort of political agenda that a lot of films kind of put out these days. And again, I'm not like rooting for either side. I'm just like just in general, like I don't see this film tackling anything. That's more of a moral
The other
discussion,
thing
you know.
I would say, like very, this might come out badly formulated, and it might seem like I'm going to say something that I don't actually mean.
Okay,
But the point I'm trying to get is that it felt like films when they were pushing a female protagonist or a female like badass in the past felt like they kind of did it effortlessly.
right.
Whereas today it feels like it's very, very forced.
Yeah.
So to me, the comparison would be Jurassic World and Jurassic Park, where Laura Dern is very naturally badass in her own way,
hmm
but and like Ripley's the obvious one as well for Alien.
Yeah.
They're very badass in a very like smart but also like really believable way.
Yeah.
Whereas like Bryce Dallas Howard in Jurassic World is not badass in the same way.
Makes
I
you.
think she does get better over the films,
I actually quite like her in the first one, um,
but
but I know what you mean though.
she's not like just like like I don't know. I couldn't even pinpoint exactly why, and maybe that's like something we need to look into,
Yeah.
or I need to look into to make a better point out of this. But I
Yeah.
feel like and this isn't me making a statement about any particular film, but just in general, is that it does feel like it's very like, oh, we need a woman to be powerful because we've never had that in the past. But it's like, well,
You have though. Yeah. You have. Yeah.
if you really look for it, you have.
Yeah.
And I know it's not always as abundant as maybe it should be,
hmm
which is, I guess, part of the
Like
problem, which is a valid
it's
point.
far from being equal compared to like men being in leading roles. Like I
Yeah,
totally understand that
which is a fair point.
argument, but forcing it isn't gonna.
The
That.
solution.
Yeah, that's not the solution. You need to make it natural. Um, and
But
especially doing remakes of like Ghostbusters and just casting all female cast. It's not
and
the way.
I think part of like what makes Laura Dern work is that she has her moments, but she's also like she needs other people to help at the same time,
But so
right?
does every character. Like Alan Grant isn't just kicking ass. You know what I mean?
And
Like
I guess that's the thing, right? Is they're kicking ass at
they're
times,
all human at the end
but
of the
they're all
day. You know,
human.
you know,
And I feel like Ray's not really like we know Ray is not a human, right?
yeah,
She's a fucking god, like you know. But yeah, it's like it's a lot of that. But yeah, you can't fault this film for that.
yeah.
Laura Dern's
I
amazing.
think that's where we. That's. I think that's a good transition though. It's just like the characters feel real, like they feel human, and they feel like they can die. They feel like they can get hurt. Like that. I'm watching the trailer now, and the kids in the kitchen. Man, I can't believe we've not brought this up. Like, what a perfect freaking layout of a scene. Just oh, like bro, I can't even like this film. Like we've not brought it up, but Robert's got a pretty interesting take on this film, and I would really, really like to have a good discussion about it because I don't think I have had a proper discussion about his point of view. But he thinks I don't want to put words in his mouth. He doesn't think it's mid. He just thinks it's a bit overrated. In his opinion, he likes the first one more than any other ones, which is the right opinion. If he said anything else, that would have been it. Dunzo.
Alan.
Freezer under the gem.
To be fair, I absolutely grew up with the first and third one,
Same.
like a
Yeah,
lot,
those are the
and I
ones.
watched the third one a lot. So I do have a soft spot for the third one, but
Yeah.
it's not in the same way as the
Yeah.
first one.
I never liked two growing up. That was always
Yeah,
my least
same.
favorite.
Yeah, I don't think I like to.
Although now, watching it now, I do prefer it over three. I think it's got some really good stuff. I just don't like Ian Malcolm as the main character. I prefer
I don't
him.
think the little girl works either, and I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think that San Diego. I mean, San Diego works in a different film. I think.
Make that the third film.
Make that the third film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or just make it the sixth film in your trilogy
Six film, there
for
you
like
go. Yeah.
10 seconds.
It's because apparently, for like behind the scenes, Spielberg wasn't wanting to do the third one, so he was like, "Let's just do the King Kong scene in this film. F it, why not? Like, I want to make that,
Yeah.
you know." And for what it is, for what it's worth, it's a good sequence. It's a long film. You just don't need it in that long film, you know. But yeah, man. So I don't know. What other is there any other scene you think needs
More loving.
more loving in this film? More loving,
More loving.
more loving. Because for
Um.
me, I'll start. I love the raptor being born from the egg. Again,
Oh
practical
yeah, yeah,
effects, freaking gorgeous, man. But also sets up a lot of like backstory in the thing because they mention. I'm pretty sure in that scene they mention how they're all female.
yeah.
You know.
And I think the way they get like that, they have that problem where they're all female, but then they turn male in the natural environment. It was all
Right.
female.
Right.
I think that's really organically put into
Yeah.
the story
Hmm.
as well. Especially, I think Ian Malcolm does a lot for exposition in the film,
Yeah, but he does it in an interesting way though. Like
but he's doing it in very
yeah,
like existential, highfalutin,
yeah,
like those other ways where he's like, you packaged it and you sold it, packaged it, and before you even knew what you had, and you're selling it. Like
yeah.
yeah,
There you
like
go.
I like that. I think for basically anything Ian Malcolm says in this film needs
Honestly,
more loving.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's great. He is so great.
But
Uh,
and I think he's basically based his career off that performance, right?
Pretty much, like
The rest,
yeah.
like, which is fair enough. But
Was the flight
uh,
before this?
yes,
Yeah,
I think so.
thought so. Thought so.
I think
I've
it was quite
actually
late
not seen that film, The
seventies.
Fly. I've seen parts, but not. I've not seen the
I
full
thought The
film.
Fly was late 70s, but I could be wrong.
It feels old. Yeah, it feels like an old film. But he looks the same age though in this film compared to Fly.
Oh, 86 was way off.
All right.
So it's like 6 years before,
Damn.
6, 7 years before Jurassic Park. Um,
I don't know. Is there a sort of scene you think is a little bit underrated compared to other scenes? I mean, it's a
underrated.
walking highlight reel, but
Do you mean underrated in terms of
like ones like because
public
everyone
opinion or ones
talks
we just talked about?
about like the T Rex chase or the T Rex breaking out
Right.
or the kitchen scene. Like, is there a scene that you kind of think doesn't get talked about as much?
I
Clever girl.
I did think of that as well. I really like the I don't know, I really like a lot of the like I was saying earlier, like a lot of the background stuff. So like the sequence where they're turning off all the or they're turning on all the systems they've turned off to reset it.
Right.
And like that whole like flicking back and forward, but also the I'm doing the motion with my hands, like I know what I'm talking about. Like the switch when they're flipping the switches and like each of the buttons gets pressed.
Yeah.
Like even the sound effects, the look of that, like everything like that. I really really like all the background stuff. Like when Nedry's getting the embryos and you have all this like when he opens it up,
Hmm.
and then it's like yeah, I don't know, he's putting them all in, and I don't know. I really like the aesthetic, especially of
Yeah.
this film,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I feel like they never have got the aesthetic right again in
Mm.
any of the films.
Yep.
Maybe the third one, maybe the second. Oh, I don't know, like
To be fair,
because this one's the only one on Nublar, right? And then they just blow the fucking place up. But
yeah.
I think I really like Isla Nublar, Isla Nublar, and I think I really like the aesthetic of this film in general.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of part of what's lost as they go along, especially with Jurassic World, is it's very clean
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And I kind of like how
I
90s
think
it
that's
is.
an issue with modern films in general as well, though. Like films just look too clean these days. Like for example, if I compare Star Wars, like Tatooine and Jakku are pretty much the same planet, yet Jakku looks a lot cleaner. You know, where it's like
Right.
how it's literally a junkyard. You know, like I think it's just the cameras and lighting these days.
I think you're right. I think it's also because film as well, and I think
Yeah.
having just seen Eisenhower, Oppenheimer on 70 millimeter. Oh mate, that beer's going straight to my head. Oppenheimer on film is I think there is very much a difference between digital and film, and that's going to
Sure.
be my inner snob coming out. But
Sure.
George Lucas, God fucking damn it,
God damn it.
why the fuck do you have to make the prequels and die digital? You fucking oh. Now everyone uses fucking digital.
I know.
the But yeah, I really like Sam Neill and the kids as a trio as well.
Well, yeah, because they set it up early, where it's like, oh, like doesn't like kids, doesn't get on with them, you know. But in some people, they'd be like, oh, of course he's gonna get set with kids. But it's like that's just the natural story
Yeah,
progression, you know.
I like the kid as well. He's like, I read this other paleontologist. He just fucking shuts the door on him.
No, no. What I love is when he like gets into the car, then gets out of the car from the other side,
Yeah,
and locks him in the
and
car.
they don't even like have like dialogue to put that forward to be like, no, you're in that car, right? They just film it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
silently, and
It's
they're
so
just talking the whole time.
again, Sam Neill fitting the role
To
perfectly.
be
Like
fair,
I can believe he's like that. just
you miserable bastard, yeah.
just Harrison
we,
Ford, you know,
exactly.
just
Yeah, exactly, mate. Sam Neill and Harrison Ford are like cut
they
of the
got similar
same
vibes.
cloth, yeah. That's a Spielbergism, though, right? Is kind of exposition dialogue while moving through a scene, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because they have that at the going up the stairs initially when they're going up the visitor center as well, right? You're getting a lot of like, oh, this is what Jurassic Park is, this is the idea,
Hmm.
and all that kind of thing. But
Yeah,
they're like moving through the scene, sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, oh mate, you've got me with this question. I'm going to be thinking about this now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think as well. Like just some other ones that don't get mentioned, but it's tough. Oh, I love the shot of when the kids get back in the sort of safe area and they see the shadow of the raptor match the painting.
Yeah,
Sick, man.
the
Again,
jelly.
like
I like when she's shaking with the jelly as
jelly,
well.
the jelly. But I think that's another thing. The cinematography doesn't really get talked enough about. Like people like talk about some certain shots, like the T Rex dilated eye or whatever. But
Yeah,
stuff like, or like the raptors in the kitchen when they look through the window and like
yeah.
the
I think
air coming out their nose and all
if
that.
we were more literate in like filmmaking, I think the point I would want to make is that the film has a certain like films that are made this way look this way, and they look better than what we have now, even though technically, as in not just technically as in what's being used, but technically as in the like actual cameras, setups, all that shit is should be better,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
But I feel like film might actually do better with worse equipment sometimes.
yeah.
Like to a degree. Obviously, that's not like oh, film on your phone and it looks better. But like, I don't know if there's like a golden period of
To me, it's
just the
because
aesthetic.
film right now looks too good, but but people confuse that with looking too real. But the issue is that real life doesn't look that good. You know what I mean? Whereas back in Jurassic Park or Star Wars original, that's what life looks like. That's what it looks like. It's not like picturesque, artistic. I think that's kind of where my mind's at. You know, where it's like not the world isn't about perfect lighting or shadows or whatever. It's about this. I don't want to call it grungy because not all like old films are like that. Because I don't think Back to the Future has that sort of vibe. I mean, in parts it does, but
It could be. The thing is, it could be any number of things as well. It could
yeah,
be like color grading. I feel like color grading's a really underappreciated thing
for
in film,
sure, for sure.
especially recently. But
But also just maybe
yeah,
the time it's set at, because again, like Back to the Future, this film,
I
they're
suppose.
set in the 90s, 80s, and that's a good era to kind of like, because I
Right.
can't imagine in 2050 they're making a film set in 2020, and it's like, how are they gonna? I don't know.
Well,
That's gonna be an interesting.
I've been thinking about this for. This is completely unrelated, but related to your point,
Yeah.
is about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mm,
The original was like 1973, 1974-ish. Definitely one of those two. And then like there was a first remake in 2003. And in terms of, I've heard they're both good. I've seen the first one, and I like the first one, but I've not seen the remake. But from what I have seen of the remake, it looks ass, like filmmaking wise. Like the original one is like very. There's something about it. Like it's on film, obviously, but
yeah.
there's more than that. It's also like it feels like a cinematic film, like an actual filmmaker's made this film. Whereas the 2003 one feels like probably not in the filmmaking sense, but like looks like someone was like, oh well, this is a horror, so it should be very muted colors
Right.
and that kind of thing. Where it's like, I don't know, there's definitely an aesthetic that fit like popular aesthetics that films go through over time, right?
Mm,
And that can be like any number of things, like you say, light, and it could be film stock,
yeah.
whatever. And then obviously like digital effects, color grading, whatever. All these things combined.
Even like
But
animation from 2D to 3D, like that's an example as well.
yeah,
Just
but like there is absolutely something about, like you say, the 80s, 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s that's very like I don't know, not I don't want
it
to say
feels more real than films now, like because it
yeah, but
is. They are
well,
real.
I don't know, because like films look like you say, like they look technically realer. Like the colors might be
Hmm.
closer to reality now, because that's a big thing with like people who, especially who are into televisions. It's all about getting like the
Yeah.
closest color to reality and all that.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, maybe that's not the solution though.
Hmm.
Maybe the solution isn't to get as close to reality as you can. Like maybe film has to be crude enough for your eye to be like, oh, 24 images a second, you know?
Yeah.
Because like films aren't made at 60 frames per second still. They're still made at 24. You could go higher, but they look weird.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe there's an aspect to filmmaking that the crudeness has to be there in order for things to work properly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. That's more of a statement, I guess, about the state of film rather than
It's an interesting
its
topic
film. But
because there are definitely people out there that prefer the look of modern films over like that's common, or else it wouldn't be a thing. Like there's definitely people that prefer the aesthetic of Jurassic World. They're probably younger people compared to people who grew up with the original.
probably dumbasses.
Dumbasses.
Fucking dumb. I was going to use a much harsher word, but I thought better of it.
But I don't know. It's an interesting topic, and obviously that goes into something entirely different. But
Well, I'll tell you what. Eventually we'll become literate in filmmaking in this podcast,
yeah,
and we'll tell you exactly why.
I think we're onto something though. I think we're onto
But
something.
and we're not the only ones.
Yeah,
But
man.
yeah, because I was in the BFI shop today, and they have books fucking galore about filmmaking, mate. You'd love that.
Oh, mate.
But yeah, Jurassic Park specifically.
I even just like the final bit where he's on the helicopter and the kids are sleeping on him, and him and Ellie just give each other that look, and it's like you've grown a lot these couple of days, like that's just, but that's again, it's just simple storytelling.
I'm gonna leave you for another man, anyways. Fucking dumb,
And
man.
have my
Like,
own kids.
who the fuck writes this shit?
But again, I even hate the idea that Alan goes back. It's like he would never could go back to you know what I mean? Like,
No, technically, he doesn't go back to Isla Nublar. He goes back. He's
And
what,
he gets paid a
Sarna?
lot of money.
He gets paid a lot of money,
Yeah, not a fan, man. Not a fan.
and then he battles some bugs in the new one.
Oh, didn't even get. And then
Ah
him and
yes,
Ellie get together.
ah yes, Jurassic Park. What everyone wanted to see.
Yeah, the
Locusts.
locusts.
You fucking div, mate.
Idiots,
Who the?
man.
Even if you're a fucking like executive in Universal, who the fuck thought that was a good idea? Who the fuck actually told them, no, not dinosaurs, those aren't marketable?
Bugs.
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 This guy watched Bugs Life and was 30 years late and thought, fuck, people love bugs, man. Actual worst Pixar film in the fucking early period. He was like, oh yeah, let's base it on fucking locusts. You fucking dumbass.
Shocking, man.
Jesus Christ. I'm
Shocking.
sorry, I had a moment.
Mm.
I think I think in general, Jeff Goldblum's dialogue is underrated in this film.
Mm.
And like his interaction with other characters, because I think that especially that dinner scene as well. I think whenever the characters are like all there
Mm.
as well,
Yeah.
I really appreciate those scenes, and I really think those are really interesting because everyone's really interested in a different way.
Yeah, because like there's a part where they're like, just because you have the tools to do something doesn't mean you need to do it, kind of thing. You know,
Yeah,
just let life evolve as it
and he's
should,
like
sort of
condors,
terminate. Yeah.
condors. If I brought back a flock of condors, you would have nothing. And he's like, that's not, no, John, no. Like, yeah, I really like. I think especially I think the people they team up with each other are the perfect ones you team up with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Alan, the kids, and John Hammond and
Ellie.
Jeff Goldblum.
And
Those
Ellie and the hunter.
and Alien the Hunter, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're all perfect.
Yeah. They're all completely different from each other as well.
But proof that this film is so good that they've made five bad sequels, and they still make shit tons of money
Doesn't
because
make any sense.
apparently the public don't actually care about good
No,
films.
that
Just
that's
as
what
long as it's
that's what you
as long as
call a
it's linked
brand.
to a good film.
That's what you call franchise. Like, oh, like
Yeah.
that's
As
the title making the money, not the film.
as as long as a bad film can be tied to a good film,
Yeah,
it will make money.
it's just like Transformers, mate. That first one was just too good,
The first one is a good film, unironically a good film, I think.
too good that the other ones just benefited
But
as well, more so.
yeah, like the Fast and Furious crowd. The thing is as well, I feel like well, we were in this crowd, right? The Fast and Furious, the Jurassic Park sequels, and the what was the other one you just said?
Transformers.
Transformers. Those are the same people, right? Those are not different groups of people. Those are the same people.
Yeah,
Like I grew up in Nickelback, bro. Like I'm that people. Like
I'm people.
I am people. Yeah.
Oh,
So I can't. I'm not gonna hate on my own people, but please like better films
I
and make
know.
please. I can't take it anymore. We started a film podcast in the 2020s.
You'd think it'd be easy
It's
to make
rough.
a sequel, though. You know,
It's rough.
you'd think it'd
Well,
be.
this is what I'm saying for Haunted Mansion. Like, surely, like Haunted Mansion's not that hard to make a good film about. Like Jurassic Park's the same. Like, it's just
Yeah,
fucking dinosaurs, bro.
yeah.
Like, I think the proof is in the pudding for the first film, where it's actually not just about dinosaurs,
Yes,
because
yeah.
all the other ones are just about dinosaurs.
Mm.
That's what they use as the spectacle, and I guess this one does as well. But this one has interesting stuff underneath as well with the characters. And like whenever you talk about like Transformers is a good
I
example.
was just gonna bring that up. Yeah,
Is I think where you're gonna say the same point is
absolutely.
that Transformers, when I watch a Transformers film, I want to see the Transformers and the Transformers only.
Mm.
They bring in the humans, and I think that's unnecessary. But I guess Jurassic Park is proof that as long as you make the humans interesting enough,
Yeah,
you can have them be there,
yeah.
even though the main spectacle is something else.
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely.
And I don't to my knowledge, no one's achieved that better than Jurassic Park, given like the spectacle is something
Yeah,
external from human beings.
for sure.
Because
No,
when you think
yeah.
about it, like Transformers and Jurassic Park aren't too different, like theme
When you
wise, I
break
guess.
them down, yeah, like they're
Yeah.
they're similar.
Like, yeah,
The only
that's nothing.
difference, I suppose, is like the Transformers themselves are characters, whereas the dinosaurs aren't.
Yeah, yeah,
But still, like, they're what you want to see, but it's not like they're constantly in the film. Like, they have their moments. You know what I mean? It's like they're in
Yeah,
every shot.
humans are just fucking insufferable in that film.
Yeah,
But I think again, like Laura Dern, like basically everyone in this film who's in this film is known as the character they are in this film,
yeah, true,
and it's
true.
like, I
Again,
mean,
even buddy Richard Attenborough, like, and he had a long career. You know what I mean? So
and the thing is as
crazy.
well, you can say,
In fact, you know what, Sam
oh
Jack? I wouldn't say Sam Jack. He's
yeah,
more
Sandra
famous
maybe,
for other
yeah,
things.
yeah, that's
Big
true, that's
Al
very.
too. I don't know. Like,
But
that was tough. That was tough.
like, you know, it's one of those things as well where you think like the biggest films in history, like we were talking, like you were saying, you grew up on Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
and technically it's the two same guys making it, right? Obviously, different teams. There's new people coming in and
True.
out. There's
True.
a lot of people that go into the making of these films that
Yeah.
don't get appreciation. Watch the credits, people.
Yeah.
Admire the credits. Respect the credits. Um, but there's a lot of things go into this. But at the end of the day, they are headline, the visionary, the poster boy is the director usually,
Mm-hmm.
especially these type of films.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, to deny like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, it's like, man, like like you say, like think of anyone in Star Wars, anything else they're in, you know them from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones, same. Jurassic Park, same. It's like, mate, Short Round came back this year and no one cares. Everyone's like, it's Short Round. No one knows his real name.
Geek
Like
one.
only because he was in the Oscars, people know his name now. But before that, it's is that Short Round? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
like he's Short Round, right?
Yeah.
Like you tell your gran like Harrison Ford, and she's like, oh, Indiana Jones. Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Like everyone fucking knows.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, man.
yeah, I don't know what my point is there, but it's a point.
At the end of the day, it's a freaking class film. I'd have to give it a 10. Like, it's one of those things. It's one of those films where it's just like I can barely even think of a negative. And for what it's done for films going forward, that didn't follow up, but still, it laid the foundation. And it's a simple story. It doesn't try to be overly complicated. So, but I think that's the key though. Like, Star Wars is pretty simple. Obviously, the lore is where it gets tricky, but the story itself is, you know, piece of cake, mate. Like, freaking the park goes tits up. Like, that's it. You know what I mean? Of course it does. You
Have
know
a bad tour and then it goes tits up. Yeah,
exactly.
that's the plot.
It's just a zoo gone wrong. That's it. But it's just like, I just can't like, just imagine like this film coming out for the first time. And I was talking to my mom about this because she remembers like when it first came out. I was just like, I can't imagine that. Like, imagine seeing this and be like, wow, like
Yeah. The
that's
thing is,
it's crazy.
I feel like you can say the same for like Endgame, but it
Yeah,
feels different even then.
there's a different feel to it because obviously Endgame is more of like a finale to this long journey,
I
right?
feel like Avatar is probably the best example you've
Avatar could be,
said
but obviously
of
Avatar
like
has got like a mixed crowd though. Like, as we've
that you
talked about,
remember.
like
But I
what
feel like maybe in like years to come, where you're like, oh, like do you
yeah,
remember when Avatar came out?
yeah, like when the 5 films finish in the next 20 years, like
Oh, it's like your son's sitting there and he's like, Daddy,
freaking
did you remember
grandson.
seeing Revenge of the Fallen? I was like, yes, son. I
Eventually.
remember seeing this. I remember seeing Revenge of the Fallen with my daddy. That masterpiece.
Oh man, but we've been going a long time. Like, do you have any closing thoughts on?
I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm tired too, man. It's been a long day for us both. Long time for us both.
Oh, I mean, like
It's Jurassic Park.
there's. Well, I was gonna say I went to the Paul McCartney exhibition today in London as well, and he has a
Mm,
line about the White Album. And he's like, "It's the Beatles' fucking White Album. Like, shut up." And I'm
yeah,
like, "It's fucking Jurassic Park. Shut up."
yeah,
Like, what are
yeah,
you gonna say? Like, any criticism. That's the thing. You give it a 10, and I'm like, and I kind of feel a bit like this with Christopher Nolan as well, where I'm like, any criticism I have, like, I'm allowed to have,
yeah,
but what fucking who am I? That like like I don't even know what the fucking terms are for some of this shit.
yeah,
And I'm like, I didn't like the dialogue in this scene, but like he's Steven Spielberg. Like, what you gonna do? Like,
yeah,
he's the biggest name in film ever.
yeah.
Like,
It's bad.
nothing we say is gonna touch this film, and that is always gonna be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
30 years though. 30-year anniversary. Mad, mad. Definitely
This
watching it in
film,
cinema, man. I need to.
and I've never seen it in cinemas. I don't
Nearby,
think.
yeah.
I've actually like recently. I've really loved seeing like classic films in cinema.
Yeah,
And I guess maybe if you're old, here in Jurassic Park, be called a classic is sad, but uh, that's what I'm calling it.
yeah,
But yeah, anything like that I grew up with that I've never seen this in, like Jurassic, like Back to the Future. I've never seen this. I would love to see Back to the Future in the cinema, or like Alien, like anything like in that period where like actual film was being used as well.
yeah,
Like I just I love it when they bring those films into cinema, and I really hope there's not only that they realize there's a market for that, which is me, they know, but they realize how to market that to people, which I think is a big part of the problem. Because I do think there's a market there, in my opinion. I just don't think they haven't tapped into it properly. But also that they just keep running it anyway. Because like, surely it's not that expensive to just like run Jurassic Park like once a month in the cinema. Surely,
yeah. I guess
like
the tricky thing now is with like subscriptors and do you call them what
streaming.
streaming, because obviously they have a whole thing about, oh, you can't put stuff in the cinema on at the same time if it's on streaming. Like they have a whole thing about that, you know. So it's like it's a
But
tricky time these days.
at the same time, I sat in a full auditorium of Oppenheimer today
There you
for
go.
IMAX. Everyone come from all walks of life that can afford it, and they've come to see a film in 70 millimeter
Yeah,
specifically because it's in that format. It's been out a month, mate. Like if you haven't seen it now, it's nothing to do with the way you want to see the film or not. It's
yeah,
because you want to have that experience.
exactly.
And Oppenheimer has managed to tap into that market that no one else is willing to, right?
Yeah,
So don't tell me there's no market because I sat in a fucking hot, smelly cinema for 3 hours, 3.5 hours, experiencing every facet of that market in my nose. Like,
crazy.
don't you dare! It's there. You're doing something wrong,
Yeah,
right? Like the Disney films are in cinemas now, which hasn't happened in a very long time, to my knowledge,
yeah,
and there is zero marketing,
yeah.
like zero.
You,
Like,
you
get
know,
them fucking
it's
marketed,
going to completely derail, but what they should have done, I think, is do like a multi like a sort of multi-ticket thing where it's like, oh, like pay £30, you can watch them all. You know what I mean? I suppose you could just do limitless the way, so it's like,
Well, do you mean like a limitless, but only for classic films?
yeah.
Not a bad idea.
But like I was specifically like saying like the Disney ones that they're doing, like, oh, here's like a deal where you can watch them
Right.
all for this price, kind of thing.
Well,
I don't
Brandon,
know. I don't know.
if the podcast falls through and if our jobs fall through, any investors out there listening, we'd like to take your money and build slash renovate a cinema
There you go.
and play all these films
Watch
and
bloody
market them
Jurassic Park all
properly.
you want.
Well, yeah, we'll play Jurassic Park every day if you want us to. But like I was in the cinema, like coming out of the cinema in Oppenheimer, like genuinely, like there was all types of people. There was old men there, like young people, people alone, people couples, families, everything.
Yeah.
And when you come out, not a single person was disappointed in that film, probably because they all knew they wanted to go see it.
Mm.
But also, you had people coming out, they were chatting about the film, and like total strangers, like
Yeah.
it's nice to have that experience with people as well. And it's nice to see like film getting a bit of love, like
I definitely think COVID helped that though. I feel like a lot of people kind of missed it during that time, and now it's finally getting a resurgence after the long break due to like delays
well,
and stuff, you know. But
I hope so. But I really hope the whole Barbenheimer thing. Obviously, it could go the way of holy shit, Barbie made so much money. Let's just market everything we can get our hands on. But I really hope it also that's going to go that way anyway. But I really hope there's also like a counter thing where it's like there's something to this whole like Oppenheimer Nolan film thing as well. Like this has made a lot of money for us as well.
well,
I really
like the
hope.
month of, was it July? It was July, right? Yeah. The month of
Yes.
July made so much money in film. Oppenheimer and Barbie. Barbie made 1.3 billion, and Oppenheimer made 800 million. That's a lot for 1 month, man.
Oppenheimer made 800.
Yeah, it's up to 800 now. Yeah,
Whoa.
it's catching up. I don't think it'll reach a billion though, but it's done very well though. Oh, nah, it's more 750 if I'm being realistic. Um, but yeah,
Is
man,
that
it's
Nolan's biggest one apart from
Dark
the
Knight.
Batman?
Maybe Interstellar might be up there. No, Inception. I don't know. Let's see, some quick ones. Yeah, Inception more. But
Oh, really?
yeah, man, freaking Jurassic Park. What else can you say? Absolute classic. Again, I'd love to hear Robert's thoughts because I am genuinely curious. Like, what's maybe it's because he didn't grow up with it, so it's kind of like me and Lord of the
You
Rings.
grew up with
Maybe
it.
I don't think so. But again,
The
I
fuck?
don't think you need to grow up with it to appreciate it, though.
This is no, but no offense, but what's wrong with your parents, Robert?
he's not watching this far. he's two,
I don't think anyone
two and a
is,
half
but
hours
like,
in. This is just for old
but
mental sake.
mate, imagine not showing your kids Jurassic Park, even though it's been in the world for like 6 years.
And,
Like, I'd be showing my kid that out the womb then. Um, Shocking.
but yeah, man, it's freaking late for us. It's very late.
Yeah, let's wrap this up. Well, thank you for watching. If you've been around this long, props to you, man
Yeah.
or woman. Jesus
Maybe it's
Christ.
just us in the future when we're old men.
Yep. Uh, well, if this is old Ryan listening, this was not. This was a strange day.
How
This was
many
a very
Avatar movies
strange
are
day,
there?
and there was only 2 Avatar movies as of filming. Yeah. Give us a little. Put in the comments how many Avatar films there are, old Ryan.
Like three.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, mate, that's it. That's the funniest thing you've ever said on the podcast.
Oh,
Like, that's it. That's the funniest thing we'll ever say in the podcast. It's
three
done. We'll
films.
just call it there.
Oh,
But yes, if you're still here, thank you for watching. And I don't know what else to say, man. Like, you've been here a long time. You obviously like this, or
yeah.
you just left it on by accident. But
We'll take it.
we'll take it, man. We'll take the view. Yeah. So, yep. Well, go out and see Jurassic Park this weekend. And we hope you like the diary segment.
Yeah.
And I'm delirious and I need my bed. But thank you very much for watching. This is going to be a hard edit, but it's worth it. But yes, thank you for watching. And I don't know, like leave a comment or some shit.
Hell yeah.
See y'all. Cut it.